Platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. I hope you guys are having a good day. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you for being here. All right, we've got a lot to talk about today. Big moves coming in Minnesota. Tim Walz is under an increasingly staggering amount of pressure. Jack Smith just got subpoenaed. Some developments in the Boasberg impeachment. More actions of rogue judges. We really got to get that locked down. I was talking to my uncle earlier today, and this is the biggest thing that scares me, is that how do we successfully deal with the rogue judiciary? It's not bad enough that you've got magistrate judges who don't even know the law, but then you've got people who went to law school actually understand the law, and they make decisions based upon their own ideology. We see it every single day. Those people are being dealt with through the courts, but I'm more worried about what they can do in the future. So the impeachment of Judge James Boasberg is very, very important. Big stuff taking place down in Louisiana. I believe it's Operation Catahoula Crunch. Gotta love it. So do me a favor, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. We're about to get right into it. Hit that like button. Help us out by sharing the show. And let's do it. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Really do appreciate each and every one of you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up. If you're watching on Rumble, hit the thumbs up. If you're watching on Pilled, hit the red pill. Thank you so much to Trump1 for the cookie, and Filter Dog 1 who says, let's kick it. Well, let us begin. You guys, I want to start with something heartwarming. I saw this video over the weekend, and in the last couple of days, there have been some really, really big developments. Now, it hit me in the feels in a couple of different ways. First of all, the man that is the subject of this video, his name is Ed. He's an 88-year-old veteran, lost his wife a couple of years ago, worked at GM his entire life, had his pension wiped out when they stole everybody's pensions. You know, I'm from Michigan, so I saw this happening firsthand to a lot of people. He lives in Brighton, Michigan, and some enterprising young man on TikTok found Ed at the grocery store. I believe it's either a Walmart or a Meijer's or something like that. And he'd had this really heartwarming interaction with Ed. And he said, I want to see if I can help you. And my God, the internet, as much as it pains me often, has restored my faith in humanity once again. This is probably the one of the most gut-wrenching and heartwarming stories that I have heard this year. Take a look at this.
Just seeing if I could have help scanning this. Thank you. What was your name?
Ed.
I'm Sam.
Okay.
I actually had someone nominate you from this store and said you're very hardworking.
Well, I try to be.
May I ask how old you are?
I'm 88.
And still working?
Yes, I have to.
Why do you have to keep working?
Retired from General Motors in 99. 2012, they went bankrupt, and they took my pension away from me.
Oh my gosh. Do you have a wife?
She passed away 7 years ago.
7 years ago.
She was sick when I lost my pension.
So you've been struggling a bit?
A little bit.
You said that you lost your pension?
Yes, sir, I did. I was in the Army back in 66.
So you're a veteran too?
Yes. The thing that hurt me the most was my wife was real sick. And they, when they took the pension, they also took the health care coverage.
Yeah.
And all but $10,000 of my life insurance.
Oh my gosh.
So I sold the house, sold the property I had, and we made it through. My wife died 7 years ago. Since then, I've been trying to reestablish myself.
And you're working here how many days a week?
I work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day.
And you do that because you have to, or?
Yeah, I don't have
What's your dream?
To live somewhat the life I was hoping for.
I'd like to share your story and try and, get people to help you retire.
Well, thank you.
Of course. You're amazing. I want to give you $400 here as a tip. Of course. You're amazing,
Thank you.
man. Of course.
I don't know what to say. It goes a long way to help me.
Give you a hug?
Yeah, thank you. I try very hard to go to her gravesite every day. And say hi.
Well, how important is that part of your day for you?
It helps me get through a day. It does.
With debt to pay and his pension gone, Ed went back to work after having thought he retired for good.
No 88-year-old in America should have to work because they need to, and that breaks my heart.
Sam Wiedenhofer is a positivity influencer on social media in Australia and heard Ed's story from a comment on one of his videos.
She said, hey, I just want to let you know there's a guy called Ed, or I think she may have even said Bob, and he's around 82 years old. That's all I knew.
So Sam booked a flight to Michigan and teamed up with a Metro Detroit-based influencer to find him.
So we walked around Meyer for about 2 hours, and we were looking for this friendly, jolly older man, and we ran into Ed at the checkout. We knew it was him right away.
The video has led to the creation of an online fundraiser, and donations are now pouring in from all over the world. The goal is to help Ed retire for good, so he can instead spend more time with those he loves.
I just wanted to give him a chance to retire, or at least have some comfort.
Oh, man. Just give me a second. So the internet, like I said, has restored my faith in humanity. This young man set up a GoFundMe for Ed, and within the last 48, 72 hours, it is up to about $1.2 million. $1.2 million. So, I mean, he's going to be able to retire now. And, I think about the people like Ed and how so many people that I know, how many people you guys know that have just been screwed over the years. You think about all of those executives from GM, when the big money comes in, they strip a company down, they sell it off, they bankrupt it, they keep as much money as they can for themselves, and they just take people like Ed and they cast them aside. I can't even imagine what would happen. First of all, I mean, I feel a kinship with Ed because I don't have a retirement. I don't know how I'm going to be able to retire. It was always my plan. I was just going to work until I died. So, I've already resigned myself to that fact. But somebody like Eddie did it the right way. He worked for Fortune 500, a blue chip company, put his entire life into that place, was guaranteed a pension and medical benefits. And in the midst of all of it, his wife could have died, but he sold everything to make sure that she lived. And then even then, he had to keep going. And the fact that this kid in Australia would see a comment on a TikTok video and fly to America and help this guy that he's never met before. It could have been totally different. I can't tell you, how much this really makes me believe that there is hope for the world. So Ed is going to be okay. And I wanted to go and check on his GoFundMe and see where it's at right now. Let's see. Didn't they link to? They didn't link to it in. Here we go. There we go. Let's go take a look at the GoFundMe. Now it's up to 1.3 million. 1.3 million. So, no, good for Ed. And thank you so much to this kid who did this for him, And, what I really hope is that with what President Trump is doing right now in America, We're going to be able to get to a point where nobody has to end up like Ed, where nobody has to work until the day they die. Nobody has to get screwed over by some multinational corporation looking to squeeze as much money out as possible, to screw people over and to just toss them aside. Because that's what they've done to America. That's what they've done to us for a really long time. And I feel like things are changing. And the moves that President Trump is making, the reinvestment in America, securing our future, not only for people who are alive today, but for future generations. You know, I can't think of a better path to take. You know, when I was talking to my uncle today, he was like, Zach, you know, tell me, you know, do you really think that Trump is, you know, what he presents himself to be? Is he really a good guy? You know, or is this just somehow an act? And I was like, man, just think about it. Think about, you know, you're 20 years older than me. Okay. As long as I've been alive, has anybody else in the history of American politics ever sacrificed as much, ever done as much, ever created as much business, investment, ever worked so hard to try to change the situation for average American people? The answer is no. So I know that President Trump is exactly what he presents himself to me. He may be brash. He may be rude at times, but I don't care. I don't care. I love it. I love him because he's real. And for the people out there who don't see that, all I can say is that I feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for you for not being able to recognize, like, the path that America is on now, especially compared to the path that we've been on in the past. Yes, President Trump literally took a bullet for this country. He could have retired. He could have walked away. He could have just gone to Mar-a-Lago and lived in the lap of luxury for the rest of his life. The man has more money than he knows what to do with. He's got a beautiful family. He's got people around him who love him. He could have done anything but the hardest job in the free world. And President Trump chose to stand up when America needed somebody to stand up. And that, more than anything, gives me hope for the future. All right, you guys. Now, there was a lot of talk in the last couple of weeks about this special election down in Texas. I didn't really touch on it because the Democrat who was running against Matt Van Epps, who was a Trump-endorsed Republican, she seemed like a total Looney Tunes. And so I didn't think she was going to win. But right here, we have Trump didn't say we were lazy and stupid. What are you talking about? Trump didn't say that Americans were lazy and stupid. Anyways, quiet, corny. I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. Anyways, Matt Van Epps has won in Tennessee's 7th congressional district. And it was not too close, 53 to 45. So that's probably good for the people of Tennessee. Anyways, I'd also like to show you an announcement that President Trump just made earlier this afternoon, terminating many aspects of Joe Biden's Green New Deal. These are having to do with gas and CAFE standards for vehicles. It's going to make it easier for people to get around. It'll make things less expensive, and it's also going to ease some of those burdensome restrictions and regulations that we have. Another thing that happened in the cabinet meeting this week is that Russ Vought, or Vote, however you pronounce it, he said that the ratio of new regulations to removal of regulations is like 48 to 1. For every new regulation that is passed, they are removing 48, which is more than at any other time in history. Oh, Eleanor 2000, thank you so much. She says, blessings this Christmas season, Zach. Maybe this will help a little. We are so grateful for you. Every bit helps, you guys. I couldn't do this if it wasn't for you guys supporting me. So, Eleanor, I can't tell you how much that means to me. Really do appreciate that. Filter Dog, well, first of all, no thanks, Joe, says, thanks, Lisa and Zach. I'm looking forward to all the news you will be reporting on today. God bless both of you. Be safe. Where we go one, we go all. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Joe. Judy the Lady Pug says, are you trying to make us cry? Wasn't trying to, but I feel like it's impossible to watch that video without crying. Thank you for every little story you bring us, Zach. Thank you. Shovelhead says, Zach, cancer screwed me 60 in April. Head and neck cancer took most of my 401. I think you mean your 401k years ago, and I still work, though, but that was nice. I'm so sorry to hear that, Shovelhead. Also, Filter Dog says, auto industry got a bailout, but banks got paid, but the workers and taxpayers got screwed as usual. Yeah, that is what I never want to see happen again. That it's just... Can't tell you how awful that is. Because, you know, they got the bailout and we got the check, right? I mean, like, they got free dinner. They sent us home with the bill. And all those people lost their jobs. Terrible, terrible stuff. All right, so let's take a listen to President Trump speaking in the Oval Office earlier today.
Office, let's listen in.
Ridiculously burdensome, horrible, actually, CAFE standards that imposed expensive restrictions and all sorts of problems, gave all sorts of problems to automakers. And we're not only talking about here, we're talking about outside of our country, because nobody could do it. Nobody wanted to do it, and it was ridiculous, very expensive. It put tremendous upward pressure on car prices, combined with the insane electric vehicle mandate. Biden's burdensome regulations helped cause the price of cars to soar more than 25%. And in one case, they went up 18% in 1 year. Today, we're taking one more step to kill the Green New scam. It's part of the greatest scam, probably, well, other than Russia, and a few others I could name. The greatest scam in American history, the Green New scam. And it's a quest to end the gasoline-powered car. This is what they wanted to do, even though we have more gasoline than any other country by far. And people want the gasoline car. They want everything. They want electric. They want to have lots of alternatives, but they do want the gasoline car. Right now, it's leading away by a lot. The car business is a very interesting business, but we want to keep it that way. I want to thank Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, Deputy Transportation Secretary Stephen Bradbury, as well as CEO of Ford, Jim Farley. Jim, where is Jim? Let's see. Hi, Jim. Congratulations. You're doing a great job.
All right, so President Trump goes around the room, gives a bunch of congratulations, everybody making it easier. Also, with these reductions in fuel efficiency savings that President Trump has now just been able to put back into place, this is going to save Americans up to $109 billion. As he said, it increased the prices of cars, about $1,000 per car per consumer. So now, with the removal of these restrictions, it makes it easier to build the cars. They can build them a little bit cheaper. Over the years, this is why things get more expensive. Besides inflation, Congress continues to throw these burdensome regulations on manufacturers and force them to include certain things, which, of course, the cost is just going to get put onto the American consumer. Take a listen.
As observed, tailpipe emission standards, one of the most important things that I've never had a group of people come to me more powerfully and really just devastated that they had to do it. It was killing them than the automobile manufacturers, the tailpipe emission standards. And I can tell you, your people at Ford were coming to me all the time, and they were saying, like, please, it doesn't do anything, and it's killing us. And it's driving the cost through the roof. And we revoked Biden's emissions waiver for California so that California communists could not regulate the automobile industry and ruin the entire nation of automobiles. And they were doing that too. But we have that now under control also with your governor, who's got much more than he can control. Now, under the new rules being issued today by Secretary Duffy, the Department of Transportation will rescind the Biden fuel economy prices. And I hate to say that because they were really not economy. They were really, they were anti-economy. They were horrible what they were doing to the costs and actually making the car much worse. But these policies forced automakers to build cars using expensive technologies that drove up costs, drove up prices, and made the car much worse. The action is expected to save the typical consumer at least $1,000 off the price of a new car, and we think substantially more than that. Under the Trump administration, $70 billion are now being invested in the American auto industry. Ford has announced it will invest $5 billion across its Kentucky and Michigan plants. Is that a correct statement?
That's right.
That's a lot, $5 billion. You could do more.
Could be more. He's always teasing. I absolutely love it. Yeah, I saw this, Mr. Anderson Lives, bring on those $10,000 Toyota pickup trucks. I believe they have them, but they're only taking them to markets outside of the United States of America, which is just, it confounds me. I was also watching a video yesterday of this guy. He was looking at like the top 10 mid-size cheap trucks. Okay, so like, you know, the smallest truck you could get to still do truck things and have it make sense. And like the pricing on these things, it went from like maybe 38 on the low end to like 55 or more. It was absolutely insane. I mean, like inexpensive doesn't mean much of anything nowadays. Now, yesterday, I actually wanted to read this letter, but we never got to it. So the pardon that President Trump gave to the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez. So as best I can tell, Juan Orlando Hernandez was railroaded by the Biden administration. They blamed him for cocaine trafficking that was happening in his country, even though he was not participating in it. And the people who testified against him to say that he was responsible were cocaine traffickers themselves. There were people who were supposed to be in prison for the rest of their life. And because they testified against the president of Honduras, they were given full pardons. They were able to get out and go about their own business, probably smuggling cocaine today. So I haven't been able to find anything to indicate that Mr. Hernandez was actually a drug trafficker. So here is the letter that he wrote to President Trump telling him his story, and it's the reason ultimately that President Trump decided to give him a pardon. Your Excellency, I have the honor to extend to you my warmest greetings and convey my highest respect, esteem, and blessings. Mr. President, I have hesitated to send this letter knowing the immense demands of your office, but the grave injustice I now endure compels me to appeal directly to you. I write to you from a federal penitentiary, unjustly serving a 45-year sentence, effectively a life sentence given my age. Just as you, President Trump, I have suffered political persecution, targeted by the Biden-Harris administration, not for any wrongdoing, but for political reasons. My wrongful conviction is based on the uncorroborated statements of convicted drug traffickers, one of whom even recorded a video exposing senior members of the Honduran radical left party, Libre, discussing bribes with traffickers, yet admitted during my rigged trial that they had no evidence to support their accusations against me, just the word of a drug trafficker. Prosecutors were fully aware of this and of the exculpatory context surrounding my case, yet they proceeded, disregarding truth and fairness. This occurred despite my being commended for the unprecedented measures, historic results, and consistent cooperation with U.S. agencies in the fight against drug trafficking and organized crime. Sounds like perhaps he was helping out just a little bit too much. And in the same way that the Democrats are now very upset about cocaine traffickers being blown up in the Caribbean Sea, they were upset that this man was taking an active role in helping to stop drug trafficking in his own country. The criminals want the drugs to continue flowing. He says, I appeal to you because I am innocent, and I believe only you can help correct this grave injustice, a clear weaponization of justice against me. I have found strength from you, sir, your resilience to get back in that office, notwithstanding the persecution and prosecution you faced, all for what? Because you wished to make your country great again. What you accomplished is unprecedented and truly historic. Not only did you get yourself reelected, but under your leadership, your party won both chambers of Congress. Your resilience in the face of relentless political persecution has inspired me deeply. Like you, I sought only to serve my people, to uphold our conservative values while leading unprecedented reforms to make my country stronger and safer. And like you, I was recklessly attacked by radical leftist forces who could not tolerate change, who conspired with drug traffickers, and resorted to false accusations, lawfare, and selective justice to destroy what we had achieved and the clear path for the Honduran radical left's return to power. This is likely why it was so strangely insistent in President Trump that this conservative candidate be elected in Honduras in the election this week. And it sounds like he was elected. There was also a delegation of American election minders there. They were from a congressional committee. I was prosecuted without solid evidence based on the testimonies of violent traffickers and professional liars motivated by revenge and by get-out-of-jail deals. Importantly, evidence later revealed that several of these criminals, even prior to and during their interactions with U.S. officials, had sought to entrap others and fabricate evidence that could subsequently offered to the DOJ in exchange for reduced sentences. Some of these efforts succeeded, others failed, and in certain cases, individuals voluntarily participated in criminal acts. Yet I remained entirely beyond their reach, leaving them with nothing whatsoever to substantiate their false accusations. A striking example is the narco video recorded before the 2013 presidential elections, showing senior members of the Honduran radical leftist Libre Party negotiating bribes with traffickers, including one who later testified against me in court without offering a shred of proof. The DOJ and New York prosecutors have had this narco video since 2013. Yet they never acted on it. In the same video, recorded just days before the 2013 general elections, these narco traffickers referred to the radical left party Libre in their own words. Here we have no alternative, and this is the only one, meaning this is the only party that we can buy. They also urged other traffickers to provide financial support to the Libre Party to prevent the National Party's success and my electoral victory, fully aware that if I prevailed, their cartels would be dismantled through extraditions and rigorous law enforcement, as indeed occurred during my tenure. In the same recording, they signaled that a Libre victory would roll back the extradition and the laws and policies I had implemented as Speaker of Congress to curtail their operations. If clear, recorded evidence was deemed insufficient to prosecute them, how can my conviction, built on nothing but the word of vengeful criminals, be justified? The cases involving high-ranking officials of the radical left Libre Party were not prosecuted, while mine advanced only because the Biden-Harris DOJ pursued a political agenda to empower its ideological allies in Honduras, the radical left Libre Party, aligned with the Venezuelan regime and consistent with the Biden-Harris administration's regional agenda. It is a bitter irony that I risk my life and my family's to implement ironclad policies against drug trafficking and organized crime. I am now unjustly condemned without evidence. Since I was a congressman, Speaker of Congress, and throughout my presidential administration, there exists a substantial body of evidence demonstrating both my innocence and the links of certain current Honduran officials with narco traffickers. Evidence that was deliberately blocked by the prosecution and the judge during my rigged trial. My defense was further compromised by ineffective assistance of counsel, as my retained lawyer was ill, failed to subpoena crucial witnesses, and had broken communication with me, while the court-appointed counsel was given only 3 weeks to prepare for trial. Classified and unclassified documents held by multiple U.S. agencies, including the Department of State, Southcom, DEA, CIA, Department of Treasury, and DHS, attest to the unprecedented cooperation I maintained with your administration in dismantling cartels, extraditing drug traffickers to the U.S., and combating organized crime. These records, together with the International Narcotics Control Strategy reports transmitted to Congress by 3 U.S. presidents, confirm the historic results we achieved. During my administration, I championed key security initiatives such as the constitutional reform to allow extradition, the asset forfeiture law, and the special law against money laundering, measures so feared by traffickers that they exposed me to death threats and narco-terrorism on a scale comparable to Colombia during the 80s and 90s. Considering this proven record of cooperation and reform and the fact that I undertook measures no one else had dared to implement, any indictment of this nature should have been grounded in undeniable and irrefutable evidence, as had been the standard in comparable cases. Yet, despite this record of cooperation and reform, I was wrongfully sentenced to 45 years based on the uncorroborated lies of confessed criminals. By my own admission, in my trial, these witnesses had nothing but their word, no videos, no recordings, no transactions, no documents, no proof of any kind. Several of these same criminals now walk free, some on U.S. streets, as a result of the actions of the Biden-Harris DOJ. When we served as presidents, we stood together as allies. In 2019, under your leadership, we signed the historic third Safe Country Agreement. Our countries built an unprecedented regional partnership to stop illegal immigration and strengthen asylum protections. You congratulated me publicly, saying, I want to congratulate you and your country, and I want to say thank you. You have done a fantastic job. My people work with you so well. And one thing that came out more than anything else, that they were saying how much you love your country and we are going to be with you. We are going to work together and we will make it better for both the United States and your country and the others that have been so helpful. So I just want to say thank you very much. It's been a great honor to be with you and be with your wife. And this agreement, attacks from members of Biden's campaign grew stronger, opposing the joint progress we had achieved. So I think he makes a compelling case, and everything that he lays out here is obviously not what was reported when he was prosecuted by the Biden DOJ. So now, knowing all of this, the fact that there was no evidence, the fact that they only had the word of drug dealers, my next question is, what about the U.S. attorneys that prosecuted this case, and what about the judge that oversaw the prosecution of this case? What about the jurors? I mean, if the jurors were not presented with any sort of evidence to show that this man was actually engaged in the trafficking of narcotics, given everything that he had done to stop the flow of narcotics from going from Honduras to the United States of America, how in the hell did they get a guilty verdict? They maybe, perhaps, might have bought that jury. They might have imposed some pressure on that jury, or they may just have not allowed any solid evidence to be put into the record. And obviously, as he said, he had ineffective assistance of counsel. So for anybody who's out there saying, like, how could President Trump set this guy free? He's a drug trafficker. I don't think they know what they're talking about. I don't think that they have a full and complete picture of what actually happened. It's been funny to me because I've seen people suggest that this was a big mistake by President Trump. And they're sometimes the same people who are talking about how we can't trust the Department of Justice or the FBI. So anyways, I think that President Trump did the right thing. Now, this one is perhaps a little bit more questionable. However, when we lay out what actually happened, it may come into focus a little bit clearer. President Trump has just given a pardon to Representative Henry Cuellar and his wife Imelda. Now, we've gone over the evidence of Henry Cuellar and his wife Imelda's crimes on a number of different shows here in the past. And I think that Henry Cuellar was guilty. Based upon everything I've seen, it seems that he and his wife were involved in some very typical political glad-handing, quid pro quo. They were siphoning money out. But the only thing about it is that I don't think Henry Cuellar is unusual in that respect. I think that this is a major problem in politics, whether you're in Texas or you're in Arizona, California. I mean, I think that politicians, by and large, are dirty. What Henry Cuellar's problem is that he spoke out against the Biden administration when Joe Biden took over and he just opened up the border. He was a representative in a southern district of Texas, and a lot of these people were coming into his district, and they were making things more difficult for him and for the people of his community. So the prosecution of Henry Cuellar began under the Biden administration. He was looking at 204 years in prison. I don't know how much his wife was looking at, probably quite a bit as well. But President Trump has given him a full pardon. Now, the one thing that I will say is that by pardoning Henry Cuellar, President Trump is now owed a major favor. And if that means that President Trump needs a vote in the House of Representatives, I'm going to hazard a guess and say that Henry Cuellar is going to be a guaranteed vote for whatever President Trump wants him to do. So President Trump called out the Biden administration's targeting of Henry Cuellar, doesn't make any specific mention of the claims that have been made against him, although, in my opinion, the evidence looks pretty damning. Perhaps in the same way that the president of Honduras wasn't allowed to present a full and adequate case. Maybe the reporting on this has, since it's only come from the Department of Justice largely, maybe we're not getting the whole story. But even if we are getting the whole story, I go back to my original statement. I don't think Henry Cuellar is unusual if he was involved in this sort of thing. But the fact that President Trump has pardoned him leads me to believe that there is a larger plan taking place in the background. I don't think President Trump would just give him a pardon just for shits and giggles. I think that ultimately Henry Cuellar is going to owe him, and that's probably going to come in handy in the near future. Let me say thank you to 417 Patriot, who says, I put in my Rise Attire order so my girls and I will be rocking our RP78 Christmas shirts and blanket for Christmas. That is so cool. So excited. You guys have got to check out their site. Straight fire. Their quality is unmatched. Yes, they are. I completely agree. RiseAttireUSA.com/redpill78. Get yourself a Red Pill 78 Christmas sweater emblazoned with my handsome face and flamingos and bullets and guns and Christmas trees. That's how we spend the Christmas right here with the Second Amendment first and foremost. All right. Ginger, because I'm not Spanish. I'm not Hispanic. So Pkwy? Yeah, I don't know, dude. I don't know. I'm not going to say his name too much in the future, so I'm really not all that worried about it. All right, now, the RNC has just sued Jocelyn Benson, the Michigan Secretary of State, because she and her administration have been allowing non-residents to vote. We have looked at the evidence of voter malfeasance, election insecurity in the state of Michigan since before 2020. We can go back before then. But the RNC is now suing Benson over allegations that the state election law intrinsically violates the state's own constitution, allowing non-residents to vote in the state's elections. More specifically, the lawsuit centers around those who haven't lived in the state but are the spouses of military and overseas Michigan voters and children born to the residents of the state of Michigan. So lawyers for the RNC say provisions around the UOCAVA, the overseas military ballots, the absentee voting in the state of Michigan, further defined by the state's election manual, allow these individuals to vote in Michigan elections despite the fact that they have never lived there. Now, RNC lawyers say that this is unconstitutional. The state constitution requires a voter to have lived in the state of Michigan for at least 6 months, although lawmakers can reduce this requirement or waive it for former residents. But it's something that they have to do. You can't just go in there and pass a benediction of this new election law when it is clearly in violation of the Michigan state constitution. So in a November 21st statement on this lawsuit, the RNC chairman, Joe Gruters, stated that individuals who never lived in Michigan should not have a say in the state's elections, and he accused Jocelyn Benson of ignoring the state constitution by allowing this practice to go on. We all know why they do it. They do it because they need extra votes every now and then, and individuals who have never lived in the United States, let alone in the state of Michigan, should also not have a say in Michigan elections. He continued by saying that Democrat Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson is ignoring the Constitution by allowing people who don't live in Michigan to vote in Michigan, and that's why the RNC is fighting to ensure only lawful votes count. Now, in the introduction to their lawsuit, they state, the Michigan Constitution allows Michigan residents and only Michigan residents to vote in Michigan elections. Every citizen of the United States who has attained the age of 21 years, who has resided in the state 6 months, and who meets the requirements of local residence provided by law shall be an elector and qualified to vote in any election except as otherwise provided in this Constitution. The legislature shall define residence for voting purposes. They also add, Michigan election law confirms that only current or past residents of Michigan may vote in Michigan elections. Now, despite the Constitution and Michigan's election law's unambiguous command that no person may vote in Michigan unless they reside in Michigan, the Secretary of State has issued guidance that a United States citizen who has never resided in the United States but who has a parent, legal guardian, or spouse who was last domiciled in Michigan is now magically eligible to vote in Michigan as long as the citizen has not registered to vote in another state. In a breakdown of the case, the RNC also added that Secretary Benson issued an election manual that violates state laws by allowing some voters who have never lived here and in some cases never lived in the United States to cast a ballot. in the RNC, also noting that this has already been addressed in a similar lawsuit that was filed in North Carolina. In North Carolina, the Court of Appeals and the North Carolina Supreme Court ruled that allowing non-residents to vote in North Carolina elections also violated the North Carolina Constitution's residency requirement. So undoubtedly, they're going to be pointing to that prior win in North Carolina. And of course, once the RNC has decided to target the voting rights of the United States citizens and their families living overseas, it is not, as Jocelyn Benson says, to take away their freedoms or their rights. It is instead designed to safeguard the elections of Michigan. This is a legitimate legal concern. The language that Jocelyn Benson has put forward in this voting manual is in total conflict with the state's own constitution. Jocelyn Benson cannot simply write laws out of thin air because she decides that she wants to, or because she's done it before with the COVID restrictions and all of that. But undoubtedly, this is going to be decided in the court, and it'll be a case that we'll be following into the future. Now, we also have a very interesting announcement coming from probably one of my favorite congressmen, Tim Burchett. Tim Burchett has just put in his name to become the chairman of the DOJ committee in the House. Let's take a listen.
Hey, everybody, Tim Burchett, just leaving Oversight Committee. I'd give those Democrats, they always have a good meal in there. Why don't we ever have a good meal? Anyway, I have officially put my name in to chair the DOJ committee. Marjorie is leaving Congress, and that'll leave the committee wide open. I sure would love an opportunity, and I know cards are stacked against me. I don't do a lot to endear myself to the leadership, but frankly, they don't do a lot to endear themselves to me. So, and y'all know how this game works. You got to raise a lot of money and kiss a lot of butt. I don't do a good job at either one of those. So, but anyway, I sure would like an opportunity to do that. I think I got the backbone and I guess the guts to go after this spending, and I think I know where a lot of it's hidden. And honestly, I proposed some dadgum legislation to do it, and I would.
Tim Burchett is not an AIPAC recipient. Tim Burchett is probably the most honest man in the House of Representatives.
Get with folks like y'all out there on and social media, put some pressure on some of these gutless legislators to pass some of this stuff. So anyway, we'll keep on fighting. Thank y'all for sitting there.
He's also like one of the only people who talks about the true locations of fraud, waste, and abuse. I never hear anybody else going after NGOs or talking about the corruption. I love him. I love Tim Burchett. I think that he's great. And also, GOP Luna has just filed a discharge petition to force a vote on Tim Burchett's bill to ban members of Congress from engaging in stock trading. So she actually announced this in a video on X. We're just going to go ahead and watch that video. Here we are. Okay.
Hey everyone, so I just left the floor with Representative Burchett, and after our bipartisan coalition and talking this morning, we have decided, because of a lack of movement from the House of Representatives, to initiate the discharge petition on banning insider trading, meaning it is live now. Now, if leadership wants to put forward a bill that would actually do that and end the corruption, we're all for it, but we're tired of the partisan games. This is the most bipartisan thing in U.S. history, and it's time that the House of Representatives listens to the American people. So it is now live. Anything to say, Burchett?
Let's make America proud. Hey, this place is broken. It is a complete open sewer. Let's at least tell America we're trying to do something right. Anybody making 600% return on their dadgum investment needs to leave Washington, and then you get their butts up to Wall Street.
Go to Wall Street.
Yeah, go to Wall Street, retire from Washington, D.C. Dadgummit. I love Tim. He's great. All right. Now, there was an interesting back and forth that took place during a hearing for a Supreme Court case that is currently being considered by SCOTUS. Now, the state of New Jersey and their Attorney General's office has been engaged in an investigation against a pro-life organization. They are the First Choice Women's Resource Centers. And this oral argument Judge Thomas had essentially dismantled the state's justification for the investigation, issuing a donor-snooping subpoena targeting First Choice. They are a faith-based pro-pregnancy support network that's been in operation for over 40 years. Now, generally speaking, when a state attorney general has an investigation into an organization like First Choice or any organization, in this instance, it was about donors, okay? And what the AG's office claims is that First Choice may have been fraudulently engaging in some type of donor scheme. But the truth of the matter is that they were going after them because they were a pregnancy-first organization. They wanted women to keep their babies. Now, during the course of this interaction, what we find out is that nobody had ever made a complaint about First Choice. There was never any claimed deception. There was nobody who was upset about having donated to an organization that was, helping women to remain pregnant and not kill their babies. But the AG's office had claimed that there was possible deceptive marketing practices. I mean, they're pretty straightforward about what they do. They want to stop people from feeling like the only option they have is to kill their baby. The messaging was very clear on their website, but the entire operation was set up simply because they wanted to target them because they were saving babies. And Justice Thomas got them to admit it. Take a listen.
Did you have complaints that formed the basis of your concern about the fundraising activities here?
We certainly had complaints about crisis pregnancy centers that petitioned.
Soon deep.
About this crisis pregnancy center.
So I think we've been clear from the outset that we haven't had complaints about this specific.
So you had no basis to think that they were deceiving any of their contributors?
I don't think that's correct, Your Honor. I think we had carefully canvassed all of the public information that is provided on the website of First Choice in making a determination that we wanted to initiate an investigation.
But you had no factual basis?
I don't think that's true, Your Honor. I think, for example, you could take a look at a comparison between the donation page for First Choice that we have carved out from the very beginning.
So you had no complainants?
We had no complaints, but the state governments, federal government, initiate investigations all the time in the absence of complaints where they have a reason to suspect that there could be potential issues of legal compliance. And look, it could be the case based on our investigation, when we look at documents, when we look at information, that ultimately will determine that First Choice isn't liable for any violation of the law.
Well, that just seemed to be a burdensome way to find out whether someone has a confusing website. But you said earlier that you did not agree with their characterization of why they were being put to this. And it would seem that the obvious way to refute that was to say we had 100 complaints. But you say you have no complaints, but rather you looked at the website and their materials and you think it could have been misleading. So why is your characterization any better than theirs?
So, Your Honor, I'd point you to the Turner Declaration, which is at pages 400 to 401 of the Joint Appendix, which lays out the predicate for the state's investigation of First Choice. And we had concerns in 4 buckets. We had concerns about potentially misleading donors. We had concerns about the unlicensed practice of medicine. We had concerns about patient privacy practices. And we had concerns about potentially misleading or untrue medical statements. So I think we had a more than ample basis to initiate this investigation.
But you had no complainants.
We had no complaints, but I think that, Your Honor, that goes at most to the merits. That doesn't go to the standing analysis.
It was a fishing expedition. They were seeking to punish this pro-natalist organization, and an organization that was seeking to save babies and stop infanticide. And it was against their liberal, left-wing, satanic ideology. That's the end of it. That's the end of it right there. They were targeted because of their ideology and their love of children. Okay, so these guys, the state of New Jersey is not going to win this case. I love Clarence Thomas. He is, in my opinion, probably the greatest Supreme Court justice around. If anybody deserves to be the chief of the Supreme Court, I believe it is him. And unfortunately, he's only getting older, and that is a scary thing. All right, now, we have a little bit of new information coming out on the case of James Comey. No new indictments yet, but the secret government employee media mole, Daniel Richman, that was working for James Comey, by taking information and then leaking it to the media on James Comey's behalf, is now seeking to block the Department of Justice from accessing his files because the Trump administration is about to hit James Comey with a new indictment. Daniel Richman wants to isolate himself and forego the government from being able to use his own words against James Comey. Now, the charges, as they are related, are all about the leaks. So Daniel Richman's files are paramount to the prosecution of this case. We need to get access to James Comey. We need to get access to Daniel Richman. The two cannot be taken away from each other. So he is now taking legal action against the Department of Justice over material that investigators have already seized from him more than 5 years ago. And he's asking this federal court judge to block the government from using these files in any way. This is a last-ditch effort by Daniel Richman. You may remember Daniel Richman is a law professor at Columbia University. The federal prosecutors are now weighing whether or not to seek this indictment against James Comey. It is a foregone conclusion. They will. I hope they also seek an indictment against Daniel Richman. The criminal case against the ex-FBI chief was originally brought in late September, but it was dismissed last week because a liberal judge used the appointments clause to get rid of Lindsay Halligan. Still don't know how that is going to be handled, if Lindsay Halligan is going to be appointed as a special counsel, but that would be something that could work. So keep your eyes on this decision coming from a federal judge. Don't know exactly who is going to be looking at this to make a decision. Now, Elise Stefanik was peacocking on X, and she says that the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is protecting the deep state, and he's sabotaging a key anti-weaponization reform, and that by doing so, he's, instead of siding with President Trump, siding with Democrat Jamie Raskin. So Stefanik took to X, and she put out this statement saying that a provision that she was attempting to add, which is designed to force disclosure whenever the FBI opens counterintelligence investigations into candidates for federal office, was allegedly quietly killed behind the scenes by Mike Johnson himself. So according to her, what she's trying to do is to close this loophole that was abused during the investigation that was Crossfire Hurricane. James Comey admitted under oath while he was being questioned that he bypassed the congressional notification when he launched the Trump-Russia collusion investigation. So here's what Stefanik said. She said, Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the White House, and yet the deep state is alive and well, with the Speaker getting rolled by House Dems attempting to block my provision to require congressional disclosure when the FBI opens counterintelligence investigations into presidential and federal candidates seeking office. In a March 2017 open hearing, my questions to former FBI Director James Comey began the unraveling of the Russiagate hoax when Comey admitted to not following proper notification procedures with his illegal opening of Crossfire Hurricane, a criminal act that can never happen again. So let's examine it from that position right there. If James Comey is already not supposed to behave in the way that he behaved, if there already is a notification process in place, then I'm a little bit fuzzy on what loophole is actually being closed. So she continues by saying, my provision will strengthen this accountability and transparency to deter this illegal weaponization, and it passed out of the House Intelligence Committee in this Congress and previous ones. Yet House Republicans continued to get rolled by the deep state due to opposition by Jamie Raskin. If Republicans can't deliver accountability and legislative fixes to arguably the biggest illegal corruption and government weaponization issue of all time, then what are we even doing? This language is even more essential in light of the continued weaponization of the federal government, evidenced by the sweeping Arctic frost wiretapping scandal and the recent illegal leaks of Steve Witkoff's conversations with foreign counterparts. Unless this provision is added back into the bill to prevent illegal political weaponization of the intelligence community in our elections, I am a hard no. I have always voted in support of the defense and intelligence authorization bills, but no more. It is a scandalous disgrace that Republicans are allowing themselves to be rolled by the Dems and deep state on this. Now, on its face, everything she says there makes total sense to me. I would like to hear from Mike Johnson on this and see, just what the hell is going on, Johnson. So on Tuesday morning, she went back to X and she put some more information out there. She said, I just walked out of a briefing on this issue this morning, confirming everything I posted yesterday. That yes, in fact, the speaker is blocking my provision to root out the illegal weaponization that led to Crossfire Hurricane, Arctic frost, and more. He is siding with Jamie Raskin against Trump Republicans to block this provision to protect the deep state. This is an easy one. This bill is DOA unless the provision gets added in as it was passed out of committee. So Johnson replied, and he said that this is not what's happening. He says, all of that is false. I don't exactly know why Elise won't just call me. I texted her yesterday. She's upset one of her provisions is not being made, I think, into the NDAA. As soon as I heard this yesterday, I was campaigning in Tennessee, and I wrote her and I said, what are you talking about? This hasn't even made it to my level. Now, it looks like we may have video to go along with that. Yes, here is Johnson commenting on it.
Mr. Speaker, Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Elise Stefanik wrote on social media this morning that you are protecting the deep state by not including a provision in the Intelligence Authorization Act. What's your reaction to this claim, and why is House Republican leadership not united on this?
Okay, so that was very quiet. She said, essentially, Elise Stefanik is making this claim. You are protecting the deep state. What is your response?
Well, all of that is false. I don't exactly know why Elise won't just call me. I texted her yesterday. She's upset that one of her provisions is not being made, I think, into the NDAA. I explained to her on a text message as soon as I heard this yesterday. I was campaigning in Tennessee, and I wrote her and I said, what are you talking about? This hasn't even made it to my level. The way regular order works is, and I think she should know this, we'll be talking about it, I'm sure, today. The way this works is that it has to go through committees of jurisdiction if it will be attached to the NDAA. And this provision that she's working on, I think, is under the jurisdiction of judiciary. And so there's a four corners engagement and agreement that's required. You all know how this works. The two chairs and the two ranking members of the committees of jurisdiction, which would be judiciary and the House and Senate, all have to agree, or at least 3 out of 4 have to agree. It's typically unanimous to make sure that it makes it onto the bill. Well, in this case, I found out last night, this wasn't even on my radar, that apparently didn't happen. I haven't even talked to those chairmen. I haven't had time because I got in late last night. But apparently those the 2 chairs and the 2 rankers in both chambers did not agree, and so that provision was dropped out of the NDAA. It doesn't mean it can't become law or even that is a final decision. But
Okay, so it sounds like Elise Stefanik may just be misinformed as to why this has happened, and Mike Johnson doesn't actually have anything to do with this. Now, she did reply. She said, just more lies from the speaker. And now I also want to say here, Elise Stefanik has been fairly reliably MAGA and going along with what, the presidential agenda has been, what Mike Johnson wants Congress to do. I haven't seen her peacock like this in the past, but she's also now running for governor of New York. So, it makes me think, is she trying to separate herself in some way to make it look like she's holding people accountable to a greater degree than other people are? Maybe give herself a bit of a name. I'm not exactly certain. But she continues by saying, in true form, the speaker texted me yesterday claiming he knew nothing about it. Yeah, right. This is his preferred tactic to tell members when he gets caught torpedoing the Republican agenda. It wasn't on your radar? This is the only provision in the bill to root out the deep state rot. And I don't know. We haven't seen the bill yet, right? Now, this is not regular order. Regular order is a member's provision that passed out of committee, should be heard on the floor, and not struck down by a Democrat minority member in a closed-door meeting. My provision passed out of the House Intelligence Committee, which is the committee of jurisdiction. You torpedoed this, siding with Jamie Raskin. You said you would fix it, so fix it. Well, that's where we're at with all of this. Not exactly certain how this is going to end up, or if Elise Stefanik is in the right, or if Speaker Johnson is in the right. But it's a little confusing. All right, before we continue, got a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, we got to be clear, cryptocurrency is not emerging, it's here. And the latest move cements that reality in the biggest way yet. Trump Media Group just inked a massive $6.4 billion deal with Crypto.com, the world's top crypto platform. They're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion in Crow, the powerhouse token that fuels fast, low-fee DeFi staking rewards and real-world perks like cashback on your spends, all to launch America's first Crow treasury. And when it's done, this new company will be the biggest Crow holder out there. If you want in on the action, head to Crypto.com today and grab some Crow. Let's make crypto great again. Thank you very much to Rumble and Crypto.com. Okay, now, continuing. Jim Jordan has subpoenaed special counsel Jack Smith. And this is something that I think all of us have been waiting for. They had independently asked Jack Smith to come in previously. He said at that time that he wasn't just going to come in unless they gave him immunity. Well, they said you can take that immunity request and you can shove it up your butt. You're not going to get immunity. So now they are subpoenaing him. And if Jack Smith doesn't come in, he will be in violation of a congressional order. It is a lawful imposition being put upon him in the same way that the Clintons had attempted to. They are being forced to come in at a later date. I forgot the date. It's not on the top of my head because it's coming up in the near future. But the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, has subpoenaed Jack Smith, and he is scheduled to sit down for a closed-door deposition on December 17th. Now, because it's closed door, he will be under oath. It doesn't mean that we're not going to see his answers. As we saw with the investigation that Oversight did into the auto pen, all of those interviews were behind closed doors, but they were under oath, and all of them were recorded, and they were all released at a later date, just to make sure there was no sources and methods in there. So he has also subpoenaed Jack Smith to bring along all of his documents related to the lawfare investigation into President Trump. That's also going to include all of his communications, relevant or irrelevant to the investigation that he ran, and it would include everything having to do with Arctic frost, because it's all one large sort of blob of an investigation. The Committee on the Judiciary is continuing to conduct oversight on the operations of the Office of Special Counsel you led, Jack Smith, specifically your team's prosecutions of President Trump and his co-defendants. Due to your service as special counsel, the committee believes that you possess information that is vital to its oversight of this matter, Jim Jordan said in the letter. Based upon communications with your counsel, we understand you are available to testify at a deposition on December 17th, 2025. Accordingly, please find enclosed a testimonial subpoena for a deposition at 10 a.m. December 17th and a document subpoena for the requested materials to be produced by committee to committee by December 12th. So they're going to have those ahead of time so they can review them in the 5 days leading up to Jack Smith coming and sitting down. Now, Jack Smith's attorney also gave a statement to CBS News. He said nearly 6 weeks ago, mentioning that voluntary offer to come in and testify, Jack offered to voluntarily appear before the House Judiciary Committee in an open hearing. Now, the other thing about an open hearing is that you're not under oath. So you may lie in those open hearings and probably have an easier time getting away with it. But again, he wanted immunity to answer any questions lawmakers have had about his investigation into President Trump's alleged efforts to unlawfully overturn the election results and retention of classified documents. We are disappointed that offer was rejected and that the American people will be denied the opportunity to hear directly from Jack Smith on these topics. As I said earlier, just because it's behind closed doors doesn't mean that it isn't going to get released at a later date. I would imagine that everything Jack Smith goes over, as long as it's not classified, is going to be released to the public. So with this investigation, clearly they are escalating the tactics that they are using. Jack Smith, appearing before this committee on December 17th, is going to give them an opportunity to ask questions about the coordinations that may have taken place between Jack and his office, Merrick Garland, the White House, Fannie Willis, et cetera, et cetera. And as it will take place behind doors, it will give the House and Senate Republicans an opportunity to zero in on some pretty important aspects of the persecution that President Trump underwent, as well as all of the spying that was done on members of the House and the Senate. Now, in October, Jack Smith, you may remember we played a clip here. He spoke out for the very first time about this investigation. He was in a sit-down conversation with Andrew Weissman, who was the former attack dog for Robert Mueller, and he lashed out at the DOJ at that time for bringing cases against Democrats and people who are clearly members of the deep state. And at the same time, he defended his own investigations into President Trump, even though President Trump had done nothing wrong. And all of these investigations into him were only announced after he announced his intention to return to run for president of the United States. So definitely looking forward to seeing what Jack may have to say. Now, in the instance of Jeb Boasberg's impeachment, as we reported earlier this week, he has refused to cooperate with his own impeachment. He is not going to be showing up to testify. He's not going to be showing his face at all. And the Senate Judiciary Committee had a hearing scheduled for later today, but for some reason, it's now being postponed. He won't even answer on his own basic questions about the authorization of that gag order on the subpoenas he approved for those members of Congress for Jack Smith. Perhaps Jack Smith will have more to say on that when he testifies on December 17th. But here's the thing. Boasberg has been demanding for months details be given to him about the internal deliberations related to President Trump's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, including refusal to return planes that were carrying AEA subjects, these Alien Enemies Act subjects, already out of the U.S. airspace on March 5th. And he also set a court date, ordered deadline of this Friday, for every Trump administration official that was involved to submit a written declaration to defend their decision-making. Why should any of them be forced to reply to Judge James Boasberg when he won't even participate in his own impeachment hearing? This response, not by Boasberg, to whom the letter was addressed, but by the director of the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, whatever the hell that is, should result in a subpoena for Boasberg and the immediate defunding of the D.C. federal court system. You can see here to the Honorable Chuck Grassley. This is coming from Robert J. Conrad, who is the director of the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. Says that your letter, dated November 20th, inquires about Chief Judge Boasberg's decision-making regarding the issuance of non-disclosure orders in particular matters, and it's been referred to me. As set forth in my previous letter on the 12th, it would encroach upon the separation of powers and the independence of the judiciary for judges to be required to explain their deliberative processes in reaching judicial decisions. But Judge Boasberg wants every person in the Trump administration to write him a book report on why they made their decisions. How is that not an encroachment into the separation of powers, as Robert Conrad puts it? Moreover, the matters upon which your letter inquires remain under seal because Judge Boasberg sealed them, so nobody could look at them. While honoring these principles, I write to provide some information to help the committee better understand the relevant practices regarding NDOs at the time of the decision. It was not a relevant practice. It was totally outside of the boundaries of anything that had ever been done before. So this is definitely heating up, and I hope that Congress subpoenas Judge Boasberg and forces him to come to his own impeachment hearings. Now, take a look at this. Indiana has a proposed constitutional amendment they are looking to add. This is going to let judges and prosecutors both get impeached if they repeatedly allow violent criminal offenders to run rampant. I think this is a great idea. This is exactly what needs to be done. Judges and prosecutors need to uphold and enforce the law. And because of the influence of George Soros and the Open Society Foundations and radical left-wing interests across the country, these people have been allowed to take these positions, and instead of making judicial and legal decisions based upon history, precedent, and most importantly, the law, they are making decisions based upon their own personal left-wing ideology. So State Representative Andrew Ireland of Indiana is the one who made this proposed constitutional amendment. We'll be following this and seeing how it goes, but I agree this is something that should be done nationwide. Now, also, in another instance of a rogue judicial decision, Judge Indira Talwani, who we have spoken about on many different occasions, she is an Obama appointee. Yesterday, she blocked a provision from President Trump's big, beautiful bill, the provision defunding Planned Parenthood across multiple states. Here's the problem with Judge Indira Talwani. This woman, first of all, does not understand the law. She also does not understand the separation of powers, because the only thing that could stop Congress defunding Planned Parenthood would be an act of Congress, because the big, beautiful bill was passed as an act of Congress. As part of their passage of this bill, Planned Parenthood has been defunded. To suggest that Congress somehow lacks the authority to make the decision to stop funding an agency like Planned Parenthood, which is not an element of the state, but is instead a non-governmental organization, is ridiculous. And it shows that Judge Indira Talwani doesn't know jack shit. She should also be impeached for this. Now, Mike Lee says this is potentially impeachable. I would say this is definitely impeachable, but it remains to be seen exactly how they're going to deal with this. I mean, clearly, this decision holds no legal weight. And Judge Talwani has, in her own mind, created herself a level higher than Congress. The Congress holds the power of the purse. Judge Talwani doesn't hold the power of the purse. So we'll see how this is going to pan out, but I don't believe that this is going to have any legal effect whatsoever. All right, now yesterday we talked about the DHS policy guidelines on the restriction of new immigration from 19 countries, as well as the re-review of people who are waiting for their asylum to be accepted. Also, this includes people who are waiting for their citizenship ceremonies to take place. This is a full breakdown of everything that's included in that DHS memo. First of all, a full freeze on asylum claims. That is for everyone. It doesn't matter what country you come from. It doesn't matter when you got here. It doesn't matter how long you've been here. This is not simply the high-risk countries which are likely to send terrorists, or countries which are likely to send ne'er-do-wells or people that are looking to get on welfare. This is everybody. No more asylum claims. All I-589 asylum cases are now paused nationwide. So in this document, they say place a hold on all Form I-589 regardless of nationality. Option 2 that's taking place in this form: all pending applications from the 19 countries that have been decided by DHS and President Trump are completely frozen. So that means everything that could be used to bring someone here from one of these 19 countries. So that means no green cards are going to be handed out to any people from these countries. No ROC, no green card replacements, no parole or travel docs, and none of the other possible actions which could allow these people to legally enter the country. If you are a citizen of one of these 19 countries, everything stops until the DHS has completed security checks on each individual case. Considering how many cases are likely out there, this is something that may take a while. Now, number 3, every single person who is trying to enter the country in any form, whether it be to get citizenship or whether it be to get an asylum claim or whether it be temporary protected status, whatever it might be, every single person is going to have to interview with agents from DHS. It is impossible to get a waiver on this because every single case is now going to be reviewed. There are certain countries out there which normally are exempt from this because they are generally considered safe. But that is no more. Doesn't matter which country you are from, you will now be interviewed if you want to try to get into this country. Now, this also includes retroactive placement for re-reviews of cases that have already previously been approved. So if you years ago had already gotten your green card and you have you didn't have to get an interview, or maybe somebody interviewed you and you think that everything's safe, it doesn't matter. You are going to get interviewed. Anybody from these 19 countries who entered since January 20th of 2021, which would be the start of Joe Biden's presidency, is likely to be reinvestigated. So that includes every single person with a green card, with an EAD, people who have already passed through their interviews, people who have already been given travel documents, even some people who have already previously been naturalized. And the DHS is likely to expand this dragnet further. They are not limiting themselves on exactly who, what, where, or when is going to be looked at. The memo says that they may extend re-review to people who entered before 2021. So if you even came in during the Trump administration, perhaps it's possible that you didn't get as close of a thorough examination as you should have. It's possible the DHS may come looking at you as well. This is the broadest operational immigration freeze that U.S. Customs and Enforcement has ever engaged in my lifetime, certainly. So this is really, really big news. If you are a migrant of any kind, you are likely going to talk to somebody who has the likelihood to kick you out. All right, now, yeah, there are no more safe countries. No, there are no more safe countries. You're correct. All right, now, another issue of judicial overreach. Another Obama appointment, Beryl Howell. She has just earlier this morning, or yesterday rather, made a decision to bar the Trump administration from making warrantless immigration arrests in Washington, D.C., and they are fighting to ensure that this is in place around the country. So Judge Beryl Howell last night barred the Trump administration from making these warrantless immigration arrests in D.C. And she issued a preliminary injunction blocking the warrantless arrests unless the illegal alien is an escape risk. So this case arises in the wake of a publicly declared emergency in our nation's capital by President Trump, in part to ensure that this city will no longer be a sanctuary for illegal criminal aliens, the judge said in her decision. Such repeated conjoined use by high-ranking officials of the words criminal and alien prompts the need for clarification of two fundamental facts in reviewing the two pending motions brought by individual immigrants and an immigrant-focused organization in this case. Defendants are preliminarily enjoined from enforcing their policy of conducting warrantless civil immigration arrests without probable cause to believe that the arrestee is likely to escape before an administrative warrant can be obtained. She also certified a class. So immigrants are now a class. Illegals are a class. She referred to them as the unassisted escape risk class. So that includes individuals who, since President Trump's August 11th crime emergency declaration, have been or will be arrested without a warrant and without a pre-arrest individualized assessment of probable cause. It's not probable cause enough that they've already been here illegally, that they've already received a final order of removal, that they have engaged in criminal activity up to and including murder, rape of children, drunk driving leading to death. Judge Howell is now the second judge to block the DHS from executing warrantless arrests. There was another Obama judge in Colorado last month that did the same thing. This ruling, of course, is hot on the heels of the stoppage of immigration that we just talked about, and likely it's going to lead to more cases coming up in the courts. The administration is not going to stand for this. We're going to go ahead and continue to fight it. Now, if it was up to the Democrats, the DHS would just keep their hands off of illegals altogether. And Pramila Jayapal has just announced a brand new bill which would eliminate the ability of DHS to even detain illegal aliens. And it would require that illegals be given taxpayer-funded lawyers. This is overwhelmingly supported by the Democrats. 123 Democrat co-sponsors in the House. Listen to this garbage.
Today, to say enough. Our Detained Immigrants Act has a remarkable, unprecedented 123 original co-sponsors. Before we've even introduced it, 123 co-sponsors, and it overhauls the detention system. It drastically scales back the use of detention. It ensures that every single immigrant who is in detention has their human and civil rights protected. Our bill also phases out the use of private for-profit detention centers. It prohibits the detention of children and families and makes it harder to detain primary caregivers and vulnerable people like pregnant women or seniors or workers who are whistleblowing on unscrupulous employers.
I'd like to report someone is hiring illegal aliens. How do you know? How do I know? Because he hired me and I'm not supposed to be here.
Requires DHS to allow members of Congress to do our jobs and conduct those unannounced inspections that hold these facilities accountable. As an immigrant myself today,
she is a buffoon. This is not going to pass. This is just political posturing, as it always is with these people. Now, let's check in with Governor Kathy Hochul, because she's one of those states that is refusing to hand over the SNAP recipient list, which the federal government wants to get their hands on. Why? Because she says it's a privacy violation. But the reality is that every SNAP recipient, in order to get those benefits, has already submitted their name, their social security number, their address. They've even having to give the income of their household if they want to get these benefits. More than half of U.S. states have already shared this data with zero privacy disasters. Nobody is having their information stolen by the federal government. Believe me, they already know it. And the audits that the USDA has already done shows $10 to $15 billion a year in improper payments and fraud. But we know with these Democrat states that are refusing to hand over the information, that number is likely to go much higher. Now, she keeps referencing a court order in this sort of a word salad that she dishes out on Good Day New York. But what she's talking about is a preliminary injunction. It's not a final ruling. So this is not an issue that has been settled. Refusing to engage and cooperate with federal oversight for a federally funded program is not about privacy. This is about protecting the voter rolls that Kathy Hochul and her Democrat co-conspirators have used to pump up Election Day.
Talk about cuts from Washington. Just yesterday, the Secretary of Agriculture said that they're debating withholding some funds that would allow Democrat runs.
Not just some funds, all of the funds, homie. All of the funds for your state if Kathy Hochul does not comply.
States. The SNAP program. You've obviously been against that. But what they're saying in Washington is we just want the rolls of people that are on public assistance. You've been resistant about that. Several states have, by the way, more than 20. Why not just say, okay, here are the names of the recipients?
Let me tell you what's going on here. We actually went to court about this because people sign up for a particular program not to have their name in a, think about, do you really want every bit of information about you in other parts of the government monitoring you and tracking what you do? I mean, this is a privacy issue as well. Even if you're on SNAP and getting nutrition benefits like 42 million Americans do, does that mean that you're
42 million bodies, not 42 million Americans, as we have come to know. And not even 42 million Americans, but 42 million SNAP cards, okay? You've got multiple people, as we learned yesterday from Brooke Rollins, you've got multiple people who were getting benefits in up to 6 states. You've got hundreds of thousands of people who are getting them twice. So not 42 million Americans, just 42 million cases.
Privacy should be invaded now and that you should be giving out this information unrelated to this program. So we went to court. A judge in October said, governors of these states, you are correct. You do not have to turn over this information and they cannot withhold that money. Now,
well, for the time being, because of this preliminary injunction. But again, this is not a issue that has been finalized. And The federal government does not have to pay you. If you don't want to participate in the legally set requirements for this program, unfortunately, Kathy Hochul, you and the people of your state are not going to be receiving your SNAP benefits next month.
To have a secretary in the Trump administration basically saying we're going to ignore a court order, that is problematic. That is problematic, and that's what we're dealing with right now.
What are your concerns other than just privacy?
Privacy is a big one. Privacy is a big one.
Elections are her concerns.
Now, we are working on the fraud issues. It's something we monitor at the state level. We don't want anyone to abuse programs. But basically, to end a program for everybody in the expectation you might find a few who are abusing it, don't you care about everybody else who's hungry? You know, the mayor-elect Mondani told me that on Veterans Day, he was sitting down with some veterans who had been, had a hard life. One of them said when the SNAP benefits stopped, he went to his refrigerator and it was empty. And that is a heartbreaking story to know that those who wear a uniform to keep us safe at night, to defend our country and our values, can't count on a program to feed them. So,
because all the money's going to illegal aliens. It's being siphoned off by Somalis, Kathy.
That is just cruelty. They need to stop trying to find ways to hurt Americans.
No. We're trying to find ways to help Americans, and we're trying to find ways to disincentivize illegal aliens from coming here to suck on the teat of Lady Liberty. Now, speaking of Somalians, we're about to transition to Minnesota here. Actually, before we go to Minnesota, we got to go to Maine, because did you guys know that the second largest conglomeration of Somalis in the United States after Minnesota is in the state of Maine? Well, guess what? In the state of Maine, they have the same problems that Minnesota has with Somalis as well, because a Somali nonprofit leader was billing Maine Care, that is like their public health system, while at the same time he was running to be a warlord of Jubaland. Jubaland is a state in Somalia. This guy is an American citizen. He's running this nonprofit, stealing money from it, and then he's also trying to run for warlord in Jubaland. Take a listen to this. This is absolutely insane.
Let's introduce you to Somali-American Abdullah, U.S. from Somalia in 2009. You're looking at, obviously, the man on my right who had discovered this story. He became a U.S. citizen, started a nonprofit to help immigrants, started several businesses, including a multi-million-dollar migrant care service agency. And in 2024, he ran for president as he raised money to bankroll a militia in Somalia. Yes, you heard that right. A U.S. citizen who, according to the Maine Wire, gave an interview with Kenyan media in which he said he raised money in the U.S. to buy weapons, munitions, and supplies for paramilitary force he had hoped to lead as the president of Jubaland. Yes.
How is this guy still a citizen of the United States? How is this allowed? I mean, he's openly admitting to seeking office in another country. He's also openly admitting to funding a friggin' paramilitary force. Like, my goodness.
That is a real state in Somalia. He was running for president in Somalia. Of course, he lost the election. We reached out to the Gateway Community Services in Maine, which Ali founded, did not hear back, ironically enough. The man who broke this report, editor-in-chief of the Maine Wire, Steve Robinson, dude, this is crazy.
You really can't make this stuff up. I mean, the guy's running a migrant services agency that bills Maine Care, which is what we call Medicaid, about $5 million a year. At the same time that he's running for president, and to be clear,
in Somalia,
that he's running to be the warlord of Jubaland. Elections in Jubaland aren't exactly like elections in America. It's, whoever has the most guns is able to certify the election. So he needed to buy a paramilitary organization and paramilitary support in order to win that election, and he lost it. But at the very same time that he was in Jubaland and Kenya trying to become a warlord in southern Somalia, he was getting no-bid contracts from the administration of Governor Janet Mills, a Democrat who has been in cahoots with Gateway Community Services from the very beginning. So if there's one thing that I would implore your listeners to understand, it's in Minnesota and in Maine, it's not just the Somali diaspora that has come over here and decided to engage in this criminal behavior. It's an industrial complex with the Democratic Party that enables and turns a blind eye to this behavior because they benefit from it through political support. And indeed, Abdullahi Ali's number 2, his assistant executive director, is the former mayor of South Portland, Maine, and is currently a state representative from South Portland and a member of the Appropriations Committee. Decca Delac, one of his former employees, Yusuf, is a representative from Portland. Many Gateway Community Services alums have gone on to become involved in politics, and Governor Janet Mills created the Office of New Americans specifically to cater to the new Americans, new Mainers, illegal aliens, and the only employee of that organization is Alkas Ahmed from Sudan, who is a former employee of Gateway Community Services.
I wish I had more time for this, but you're on a roll.
It's a pipeline. It is a criminal, illegal alien pipeline. Now, Janet Mills and her brother are also involved with all of these Chinese off-book marijuana grows in the state of Maine. The criminality involved in these people all across the political spectrum is shocking. I mean, it would be shocking if we lived in a world where it wasn't so freaking normal. Now, yesterday, we heard a little bit from Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy. He was talking about shutting down all of these CDL mills and getting thousands upon thousands of illegal aliens off the road. Well, a lot of those licenses that we saw as these people were being arrested were coming from the state of Minnesota. And the administration has just uncovered a massive foreign trucker illegal license operation in Tim Walz's backyard. A third of Minnesota's non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses reviewed in this audit by the Department of Transportation were issued illegally. The review was conducted by the DOT's Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration as part of Trump's crackdown on unqualified non-citizens that were endangering people on our roads. The state has 30 days to come into compliance and revoke these illegally issued CDLs, or they risk losing up to $30.4 million in federal highway funding, the Department of Transportation has announced. Officials wrote that Minnesota now has two choices going forward: either follow the law or lose funding. Now, Duffy directly called out Tim Walz in a statement. He said, "Our audit exposes yet another example of foreigners taking advantage of Minnesota services under Governor Walz's watch. Minnesota failed to follow the law and illegally doled out trucking licenses to unsafe, unqualified non-citizens, endangering American families on the road. That abuse stops now under the Trump administration. The department will withhold funding if Minnesota continues this reckless behavior that puts non-citizens gaming the system ahead of the safety of Americans." Now, the FMCSA sent a letter to Walz and the Minnesota Department of Public Safety Commissioner Bob Jacobson. They outlined the findings from this audit, and they detailed how Minnesota gave non-domiciled CDLs to drivers whose lawful presence in the U.S. had expired, people whose lawful presence in the U.S. had never been verified, and people who were prohibited from obtaining a license like this in the first place. So the DOT is obviously demanding Minnesota execute a corrective course of action. That includes a pause on the issuance of non-domiciled CDLs and identifying all unexpired non-domiciled CDLs that fail to comply with current regulations. Minnesota is openly and blatantly defying our rules, pure and simple, Derek Bars, who is the administrator of FMCSA, said. Under the Trump administration, states have two choices: meet our standards or face the consequences, because following the law is not optional. There is so many things wrong with the state of Minnesota, and they keep finding more the more that they look. Now, I want to play this video for you. This is an example of the attitude of a Somalian in Minnesota. And this guy probably has a sub 70 IQ. That's going to be obvious when you hear what he says. But take a listen. Completely and utterly misinterprets the Bible. The thing about the Bible is everybody can go reference it. You can see what the Bible says. He's going to reference Genesis 12:3 here in this clip. And he has interpreted it to mean that God promised Minnesota to Somalians 3,000 years ago.
Yo, Minnesota was promised to us Somalis 3,000 years ago. And if you disagree, you're an anti-Kushite bigot, and you need help immediately. Also, if you read Genesis 12:3, it says that those who bless Somalis will be blessed, and those who try to harm them will bring harm upon themselves. I didn't say that. Genesis 12:3. Just saying.
That's the thing. Genesis 12:3 didn't say that either. What Genesis 12:3 actually talks about is those who bless Abraham and those who curse him will be cursed. Okay, those who bless Abraham will be blessed. Those who curse Abraham will be cursed. Doesn't say jack shit about Somalians. Somalia didn't exist 3,000 years ago or 6,000 years ago or 1,000,000 years ago whenever the Bible was actually written. Nobody was writing about Somalia in that Bible. Anti-Kushite bigot, he says, if you don't believe what he says. Now, take a look at this. The mayors of the Twin Cities, we've got dueling commentary from both of them. And the mayor of St. Paul was on CNN talking about all of these charges of fraud. And he says that the charges of fraud that are being brought against Somalis in his community show that federal agents are not adding value. Somehow, again, they are claiming that Somalians being targeted for their fraudulent activity and the criminal networks that they've created in Minnesota are somehow a reflection of racism and bigotry, not a reflection of the criminality that these people are engaging in. So here, I'm going to go ahead and play this clip.
The mayor of St. Paul, Minnesota, Melvin Carter.
Oh, shucks. You know, this is I thought this was a shorter clip. Anyways, Melvin Carter is the mayor of St. Paul. He showed up and he said that these charges against these several individuals for fraud in the state, not just several dozens upon dozens, are another example that we actually don't need those federal agents and they're not adding value in our community. So, okay, the DOJ is filing charges against these people. This means that we don't actually need ICE to come into the state. That doesn't make any sense. It shows that we need ICE and we need people coming in and enforcing these laws even more. He sees it as a destabilizing force. We see the Somalians who are defrauding the United States of America as the destabilizing force. He said, by the way, those fraud allegations were uncovered by local law enforcement, but they were not necessarily prosecuted by local law enforcement. Our state's attorney general pressed charges. I want you to hold on to that thought because Keith Ellison is not necessarily the guy who's going to be bringing charges against anybody. So here, I'm actually going to play you a video that we've listened to previously. I believe this came out, I don't know, maybe in the spring. But what this is a recording of Keith Ellison speaking with some of the guilty parties from the Feeding Our Future scam. And he essentially is talking about helping to ensure that these people don't go to prison for the crimes they've committed against the state of Minnesota and the people of the United States. Listen to Keith Ellison making a deal with these people.
You know, feel free to call me directly. And it is my goal to see prosperity among people who've been denied it. You know, I think it's very kind and important for you to say that new American communities appreciate the sacrifices of people who come before, but we're all in this together. Mm-hmm. Right? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of you to say it, and I appreciate it, but we don't recognize no differences between us. Mm-hmm. We're one, and we're going to stand up for each other and make sure that we get some things fixed. Absolutely. I do recognize there's a problem, but what I really need to move to be effective on your behalf is to get specific. Absolutely. And it's like, you know, this sister on this day is having this problem on this, and then I can call up and be like, what is the problem? And let me tell you, just being able to say, just getting the question, just getting the inquiry from the AG is sometimes enough to make people knock it off.
We need a true. So what was the problem they were dealing with at this time? They were dealing with the problem of getting caught engaging in hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud. They were stealing money that was ostensibly earmarked to feed hungry children. And instead, they were buying multi-million-dollar homes, designer handbags, fancy shoes, private jets, Bentleys and Rolls Royces. They were buying property in other countries. That's the problem that Keith Ellison could address for them.
And steadfast partner to fight for basic justice. And that is your MO.
Well, brother, let me just tell you this. Of course, I'm here to help. I mean, but let me be clear. I'm not here because I think it's going to help my reelection. I don't care about no reelection. I voluntarily threw my congressional career away. I'm like, I don't want to do it anymore. It's boring to me. So to do this, to do what I'm doing now. So of course, I didn't leave that job to do nothing in this job. I mean, am I going to get more hits than I got by prosecuting a police officer and giving them life in prison? Right? So so let's just go fight these people.
Let's go fight these people. The very people who are prosecuting these Somali criminals for taking advantage. Now, we also have a statement from Mayor Jacob Fry, who recently was able to capitalize on intertribal relations in the Somali community to beat out a Somali candidate. He's the mayor of Minneapolis, one of the other Twin Cities. So he and the local police held a news conference yesterday because they knew that ICE was about to come into these cities and they were going to start rounding people up. It's pretty clear that's what the administration was going to do. Now, in the midst of his address to the people of Minneapolis, just as he did when he was on the campaign trail, he actually spoke to them in Somali. He said that Minneapolis is proud to be home to the largest Somali community in the country. They are our neighbors, our friends, and our family, and they are welcome in our city. Nothing Donald Trump does will change that. And then he shifts into apparently his native Somali tongue.
That's not American. That's not what we are about.
The enforcement of the law, ensuring that illegal aliens are not present on our streets and ripping off America, that's not American. That's pretty damn American as far as I'm concerned.
And we're going to do right by every single person in our cities. And so to our Somali community, Daman Shabka, Somalied Kunul, Minnesota, Garahan, Minneapolis, Waan, Ku Janila Hai, Waan, Ku Gereb, Taganahan.
What the hell does that mean? Got marbles in his mouth. I don't even know what he's talking about. So he's obviously speaking to the Somalis who helped him reach re-election. His promise is essentially that we are not going to let the Trump administration come in. Now, his chief of police went a step further, and he urged community members, these would be the Somalis that likely are going to get arrested, if they see ICE doing enforcement actions, if you see people with badges wearing masks come into your city and arrest people, he said you should call 911.
Folks that are masked, that they're not sure if they're law enforcement, that they may be kidnapping people. Like, we have had those reports. I want to be clear to the community. The community should know that if you see something like that, that is legitimate, that you don't know if someone is law enforcement, you should call 911. And you should provide as much information as possible, because let's not forget, we very recently had tragedy in this state by someone who was purporting to be law enforcement. So please, let's be clear. That's something everyone should report, and that we will immediately respond to, and we will document, whether it's somebody's not sure if there's a kidnapping happening, somebody's not sure if there's law enforcement present or not. And that's something else that's additional policy requirements that we are implementing, that we will document and report these types of things anytime that we hear it, and reminding our officers of their duty to intervene. So if there is anything that is, a violation of someone's human rights or civil rights, excessive force or anything like that, they absolutely have a duty to intervene as police officers.
They do not have a duty to intervene. They have a duty to support the efforts of federal agents to engage in lawful activity to keep their own streets safer. This is probably going to be a difficult task when ICE really starts clamping down inside the Somali community in Minneapolis and St. Paul, because there's so many of them. They're pretty well organized. And they're also unrepentant criminals. Make no mistake. You've got people running the streets with guns in an organized criminal fashion. I hope that they send as big of a surge as they possibly can. Now, Tom Homan, in response to the mayor and the police chief, had his own message.
When do you expect ICE to make its presence really known in the Twin Cities? Approximately.
I can't forecast that. I don't want to give up operations, but I can tell you that, Secretary Noem's all over it. I know ICE and CBP and other federal agencies, the FBI, DEA, ATF. President Trump's been a genius on this. He brings all the government to these operations. So if we arrest an alien with drugs, you got the DEA right there, can prosecute the case before we deport him. If you get him with a gun, you got ATF right there to prosecute the case before we deport him. But I can tell you, focus is there. It's coming. But I don't want to give a lot. I can't tell you how many people are on the ground now, how many people are going to be on the ground. I'll leave that to the Secretary of Homeland Security. But focus is on those Twin Cities more because of the criminal activities been uncovered by DOJ and DHS.
So what that tells me is that the administration is not ignorant to what's going on there. They understand how much is at stake and how big of a job this is going to be. DEA, ATF, FBI, CBP, ICE. It's going to be the full complement of federal agencies who are going to be able to be there and get this taken care of as quickly as possible. Now, it wouldn't be a day talking about Minnesota if we didn't talk about yet another instance of massive fraud taking place in the Somali community. Here, we have the story of a Minnesota man, Minneapolis man who is a Somali, who has been charged with stealing over $1 million from an NGO. Now, the thing is, this guy is not new to this. He's previously been charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States, and he's already gone to prison. But he got out of prison, went back to Minnesota, and he began to steal more money. Let's take a listen.
Another person is charged in a $1 million scheme to defraud federal, state, and county COVID relief programs in Minnesota. 41-year-old Tony Terrell Robinson is charged with wire fraud and conspiracy. He worked with Tezzeri Elamine Champion, who's already been convicted and sentenced to 7 years in prison. Robinson was the operations director for Champion's nonprofit Encouraging Leaders in North Minneapolis, and is accused of applying for grants for things like juvenile justice that federal prosecutors say the nonprofit never did any work on. And this is not the first time Robinson has been charged with fraud, raising questions about the amount of diligence these state, county, and federal groups made before handing out all this grant money. I'm Lou Ragu.
They looked at his picture, they looked at the website for the NGO, and that was it. Zero due diligence. Zero due diligence. This is an effort to transfer wealth from the federal government into the hands of people who they perceive to be as historically disadvantaged. Now, this is something else that we knew about previously, but I just thought that it would be good to bring it up in the context of an investigation by the federal government into Tim Walz. When Tim Walz was at the National Guard, he was suspected of having transferred classified military secrets about our tanks to the Chinese Communist Party. And wouldn't you know it, the same tank plans that Tim Walz was suspected by the FBI of transferring to the CCP ended up being used to build that exact same tank for the CCP. So my point here is, if we're going to be investigating Tim Walz, why stop at the fraud taking place under his watch? Why don't we go as hard as we can? Go back in time and take a look at what Tim Walz has done throughout his career, up to and including the claims that have been made against him by young people.
I've spoken to a couple people that served with Tim Walz in Nebraska in that Guard unit, and they suspect, and we've done stories and tried to reach out to Walz for comment, but they suspect that perhaps he took their standard operating procedure, the SOP, for the Howitzer Army tank. He was assigned to this tank. It was nuclear capable, and this was all laid out in the SOP that goes missing. while he's there. And
the manual goes missing?
Right, and they had talked to the FBI about this as well. There's so
what does
many
that mean?
questions.
Why did they talk to the FBI?
They think that he's traveling back and forth from China at this time. And then we also know that this howitzer...
Wait.
I know I sound crazy right now.
No, you don't sound crazy at all. You're recounting the facts.
Yeah.
You were saying that men he worked with in the National Guard in Nebraska went to the FBI because they believed he had given classified military secrets to the Chinese government?
They suspect that he did, and
well, they suspected to the point that they went to the FBI.
Well, this was all when all these stories are coming out finally about his background, and they're like, maybe we should talk about this. These are guys that back then didn't report this. This was in the early 90s, and they always talked about it amongst themselves. And I think that they weren't completely aware of, the potential threat something like this could pose, but they always thought this was very strange. And then China started producing almost a carbon copy of this military tank a couple of years later.
Come on.
Isn't that strange? Motive, opportunity, and then you've got the result that is achieved. Now, let me say thank you very much to Eden's Refugee, who says, Zach, I had to start from the beginning. I got teary-eyed, but started crying like a bitch with a skinned knee when I heard you sniffle. God bless Ed and those like him. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Lee Walden, good to see you, homie. He says, Zach, you continue to impress with your approach to current events. It's very remarkable. We are blessed to know you, young man. Shake it easy. Don't let your meatloaf keep. Where we go one, we go all. And then he says, Zach, shake it easy. Don't meatloaf keep the lobsters off your piano and the crabs off your organ. Booyah. Then he also says, we might witness new high-tech operations in Somalia, Minnesota. Might be the water cannon. How about microwave or dues or frequency stuff? Just a thought. I think that if it gets to a point where they need to engage in crowd control, I hope that they bring everything at their disposal. Now, take a look at this. Ilhan Omar yesterday had posted his obsession with me is creepy. I hope he gets the help he desperately needs, talking about President Trump. And Rapid Response 47 replies with, why did you marry your brother? Obviously, that's a question that all of us want to know, because Ilhan Omar and her brother, I think Ahmed Elmi was him and Ahmed Hersi was her husband before. She married him so that she could engage in immigration fraud. Again, if we're going to be investigating Minnesota, investigate Tim Walz, but investigate Keith Ellison, and definitely investigate Ilhan Omar. If we can deport her and get her the hell out of here, then let's do it. Now, the House Oversight Committee yesterday had announced their investigation. They are now investigating the massive fraud under Tim Walz's watch in Minnesota. But here's where it's interesting. They retweet the Minnesota DHS account that I made mention of a couple of days ago, and they say, if you are an employee or you have information James Comer wants to know, fill out our whistleblower form to help us get to the truth. Now, minimum, there's almost 500 employees that are associated with this Minnesota DHS account who attempted to blow the whistle on Tim Walz and the fraud that they saw going on. So I guarantee you this inbox is now chock full with reports that have come in from these whistleblowers. Now, they also themselves posted this. They had said previously that Tim Walz and higher up employees in the mid-level management had engaged in attempts to stop and stifle whistleblowers from coming forward. This is an email that one of these employees who attempted to report this fraud received. They say, for public awareness, the attached message shows the pinnacle of quality leadership in Tim Walz's administration. When staff raise concerns about fraud, waste, abuse, our leadership responds like this. Listen to this. Leaders, see below. This is an email that has been going around since I got here from week 2 and has not said anything nice about me. It can be tracked since it comes into the DHS server. I have kept a record of all of these emails. They explicitly threaten those people attempting to blow the whistle. I completed a quick search a while back from when I was only 2 weeks here, and I was able to track down the IP address for the email, but currently don't have the app to track specific location. So what do? They reach out to their friends in intelligence. I wanted to reach out to my colleagues that I did intelligence research with in the Army and give them the IP address and the email address to track back to specific location, but was asked by upper leadership to hold off as they are doing their own thing with it. The email violates, but he means violates, respectful work environment and creates toxic work environment. It is not a professional way of confronting issues, just sharing as an FYI. Thank you very respectfully, Emmanuel Nawala, PhD, the Interim Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Operations at BHDH Administration, Minnesota Department of Human Services. So when somebody tries to come forward and blow the whistle, their answer to this is to track down the person who sent the whistleblower complaint in. And if they're unable to find them, contact their friends in military intelligence and have them track down that way so that they can stop them from doing the good work. All right, before we continue, I have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, if you still have not tried 1775 coffee, you still have an opportunity to do so. Their 1775 starter kits are available. You're going to get in those kits their bold dark roast, their smooth medium roast, and their vitality mushroom coffee that gives you clean energy and laser focus without the crash. All of it is the highest quality coffee you're going to be able to get. Single origin, small batch, toxin and mold free. Plus, you're going to get a couple of freebies, their gold spoon clip, a very strong frother, and a black 1775 tumbler. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, and it's all yours for $99. This is for everyone who's been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is. So go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. And you can use that QR code that you saw on screen or the link in the description. All right. Now, continuing back to oversight. James Comer gave a brief interview earlier today talking about the investigation into Tim Walz and the massive welfare fraud that's been going on right under his nose. And he makes specific mention of these whistleblowers that we've been talking about.
Well, we know that there are government employees that have come forward that said they alerted both Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison that this fraud was taking place.
And that's the first time that we've heard from an official government source that not only was Tim Walz advised about this fraud, but the top cop, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, was also made aware of it. And they both together chose to do nothing. They chose to cover it up and to protect the Somali fraudsters in their state.
And that both the Attorney General and the Governor of Minnesota turned a blind eye to it, that they were afraid of the bad press or the political consequences because they may be discriminating against the Somalis or the other illegals that had come into Minnesota. Look, at the end of the day, this is about waste, fraud, abuse in our government. That's why we had a battle to shut down the government. That's why we battled with the Democrats over the big, beautiful bill and the changes and reforms made to Medicaid and other government programs. There are massive amounts of waste, fraud, and abuse, and much of this waste, fraud, and abuse revolves around illegals. They're in blue states where you have liberal governors like Tim Walz who have welcomed all these illegals in for purely political reasons, and they're turning a blind eye to the massive amount of government programs that they're defrauding the American taxpayer. So we want to shine a light on this, obviously, but we hope to hold the governor accountable for his wrongdoing if he in fact did know about this. And look, this is a problem in a lot of states, so hopefully this will lead to massive reform.
Tim Walz knew, and this investigation will have subpoena power, and they will be referring to the Department of Justice for people who were aware of this criminal activity and chose to do nothing about it. So like we said, the ICE raids are now going to be targeting Somali illegal immigrants in the wake of all of this discussion about fraud. Launching a massive and aggressive ICE operation in the Twin Cities this week, it is aimed at primarily the undocumented Somali nationals that already have final deportation orders in. This is coming from review of internal documents that I guess the New York Times got their hands on. So This is obviously following the push by the White House to crack down on these dangerous illegal aliens, and now specifically Minnesota's Somali community. They are going to be surging strike teams of federal officers into Minneapolis and St. Paul. And what makes someone a target of ICE is not their race or ethnicity, but the fact that they are in this country illegally, Tricia McLaughlin said. The enforcement directive comes as President Trump is escalating his commentary about Somalis in the U.S., and it's largely going to focus on the final order of removal first, but potentially may sweep up others whose immigration cases are pending. Likely that is the case after we reviewed that document coming from DHS. Tim Walz posted in a response on X, "We welcome support in investigating and prosecuting crime, but pulling a PR stunt and indiscriminately targeting immigrants is not a real solution to a problem. Nothing indiscriminate about it. We know that there is massive fraud going on there in the Twin Cities, and these people need to get arrested and they need to be removed." Now, Caroline Leavitt said on Monday that Somalis in Minneapolis had ripped off American taxpayers. She pointed to all of these investigations we've been discussing for months. They've also reported that Twin Cities is part of a broader national crackdown. We've had the raids in Los Angeles, Chicago, Charlotte, and also New Orleans, which we're going to talk about in a moment. Minneapolis and St. Paul, of course, have policies which limit local cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, but recent federal actions have tested those limits, including a June operation near downtown Minneapolis that sparked clashes with protesters and a mid-November St. Paul raid that led to 14 arrests. I can only hope that we're going to see many, many arrests. Here is a video that appears to have been published by a local Somali resident, and there are raids that have been posted all across X today. Let's take a look, and we can see a number of them taking place as ICE rolls in on the Somali community.
My mom, I got at least like. She said okay? Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Get them, boys.
For you to be there. You're following. Yeah, oh, okay. If you leave the property, I wouldn't be following you, sir. I wouldn't. Oh.
Allah will aid us all. Yes. They run. We're carrying, wallah. Yeah. Ha.
And the police is on its way, yeah.
They called the police on ICE.
We're carrying ICE, wallah. Way joogaan wallah. Baabuurtooda ku carreen laakiin. Yeah.
Beautiful language.
ICE waaye guriga Maxamed Daawudaan ka ceerinay. Yeah.
Two Somali women were pulled over. ICE is driving mom cars. Beware. Mom cars. All right. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also had retweeted a post from the Treasury Department. Today, as part of President Trump's crackdown on international drug trafficking organizations, Treasury has sanctioned key affiliates of the terrorist cartel Tren de Aragua. The network sanctioned today includes entertainer Rosita. I'm not part of her target demographic, so I have no idea who she is, but I guess she's a DJ, an actress, and a model with millions of social media followers, and others involved in holding drug-fueled parties to benefit Tren de Aragua. Treasury will not stop fighting to make America safe again. Scott Bessent says under POTUS, barbaric terrorist cartels can no longer operate with impunity across our borders. The Tren de Aragua network's narco-trafficking and human smuggling operations have long posed a great threat to our nation. At the direction of real Donald Trump, we will continue to use every tool to cut off these terrorists from the U.S. global financial system and to keep Americans safe. I sincerely hope that we start seeing the seizure of assets and bank accounts. Now, we've also got to visit a story from a couple of months ago. You might remember this police officer in Hanover, Illinois. He was an illegal alien from, I believe, Malta or where was it? Montenegro, pardon me. So, yeah, this guy is an illegal alien, but they made him a police officer and they gave him a gun. This itself is illegal. He was arrested by ICE and he had overstayed his visa, so he was supposed to be kicked out of the country. However, a judge has allowed him to leave jail, and he has been reinstated by the Hanover Park Police Department because I guess they want illegal aliens working on the force. They've actually given him back pay as well, and they also gave him his gun back as well. So ICE arrested Bajovic, what was his name? Radule Bajovic. They arrested him, and he had entered the U.S. in 2015 and overstayed his visa. So he's been here quite a long time. He has been here over 10 years. What kind of a police department gives criminal illegal aliens badges and guns? It is a felony for him to possess a firearm. However, they allow it to happen. So the release of Bajovic came after a judge granted him a $2,500 immigration bond 2 weeks after he was detained. Given that this bond was not contested and he remains authorized to work by the federal government, the Hanover Park Police Department determined he may return to work. The bottom line is that all information we received from the federal government indicated that Officer Bajovic is legally authorized to work in the United States as a police officer. Clearly, without that authorization, the village would not have hired him. Additionally, the village has not received any notice from any federal or state agency that his work authorization status has ever been revoked. Maybe they will get that authorization revocation out now, considering the fact that everybody knows he's an illegal alien. All right. Now, yesterday we heard from a resident of North Dakota who had dug into Lutheran Social Services, who was being paid for every Somali that they brought into the country. It doesn't stop with Somalia. It's also happening with immigrants that are coming from other countries like Afghanistan. What's interesting is that just shortly before the tragic events that took place in D.C. the day before Thanksgiving, on November 24th, Reuters ran a story about President Trump's administration's decision to give additional vetting to Afghan refugees because of the way that Biden had disastrously pulled out. Of course, the concern was that the backgrounds on these Afghan refugees had not been thoroughly checked and they had not been looked at for terrorist concerns. So the next day, World Relief, which is an organization that facilitated the incoming travel of these Afghan refugees, put out a statement condemning President Trump for initiating further vetting, saying that it would re-traumatize the refugees. Well, guess what? The day after that, on the 25th, is the date that Afghan refugee Rahmalla Lakanawal, who was actually settled in the United States by World Relief. He's the guy who shot those two National Guardsmen in cold blood. He killed Specialist Sarah Beckstrom. She was only 20 years old, and 24-year-old Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf was left in critical condition. He is now convalescing and getting better, but he's still in a bad way. It's kind of interesting that World Relief, which is an immigrant arm of NA Evangelicals, would oppose further vetting, and it just so happens the next day we have one of the people that they brought in actually commit an act of terror, and it's obviously something that needs to happen. So one reason that they are against further vetting is because they have taken in hundreds of millions of dollars from their resettlement of Afghan migrants. They've brought in $330 million from the federal government since 2021. Now, in 2021, the very year that they resettled Lakanawal, they received $56 million from the federal government. So they are being paid for every Afghan that they bring into the United States. And they are directly in line with the need for these people to be looked at closely. They don't want those people to be looked at closely because the closer these people get looked at, the fewer of them they're able to bring in. This is all about money. They don't care about the safety of Americans. They just want to pad their pockets and get as rich as possible. Now, Freya says it's too cold. They won't protest right now. It remains to be seen. Lee Walden says we might. Oh, I already read that one. Thank you again, Lee. All right. Now, we do have some new information on that Afghan Special Forces CIA hitman that was allowed to come into our country that World Relief facilitated. Turns out he shouted Allah Akbar at the time that he fired the gun, and he has now officially been charged with murder. In a newly released criminal affidavit, we've learned that he shouted Allah Akbar as would be expected by a Muslim terrorist. He's been charged with 2 counts of assault with the intent to kill, 1 count of murder, and 1 count of possession of a firearm during a crime of violence. He attended his hearing in D.C. Superior Court remotely from his hospital bed because he got shot in the ass, and he was seen lying down with his eyes closed, and he appeared to be in pain. Good. I hope he was in a lot of pain. Lakanawal's defense attorney said that his client pleads not guilty to all charges. You would expect that to happen. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office said a D.C. Superior Court judge today found probable cause that Lakanawal committed the offense of first-degree murder while armed, assault with the intent to kill while armed, and 2 counts of possession of a firearm during a crime of violence, and ordered that he be held without bond pending a preliminary hearing. Well, at least that's a good thing right there. He was, of course, injured during the shooting. He remains in a local hospital. He's currently being treated and held under guard. So what we know is that he drove from his hometown in the state of Washington to Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, November 26th. He arrived at about 2:13 p.m. at 17th and I Streets Northwest near Farragut West Metro Station, and he opened fire on the 2 National Guardsmen without provocation, shouting Allah Akbar. Fellow guardsmen at the scene responded immediately, and they engaged to subdue the suspect. That is all we know at this time. Now, there was, strangely enough, another act of potential Muslim terrorism that was about to take place, but a University of Delaware student was instead arrested by police before it could happen. He was found to be in possession of guns, a manifesto. He was writing about his upcoming martyrdom, and he also had schematics of a local police station that he had drawn up because he was planning this pretty meticulously. Lee says, Zach, I'm convinced that you will be reporting major events in the coming days. Might I suggest that soundboard be loaded with the jingle, Bad Boys, Bad Boys. Okay, I can get that taken care of right away. All right, so on November 24th in Wilmington, Delaware, a resident and University of Delaware student by the name of Luqman Khan, 25, he's a native of Pakistan, was stopped by police during an after-hours property check in Canby Park West. He is a legal immigrant from Pakistan. Now, court documents reveal that Khan was asked and then refused to exit the vehicle. He was sitting in a park after it was closed. He was taken into custody, and during a search of his vehicle, they found a .357 caliber Glock handgun that was loaded with 27 rounds. He had 3 more 27-round magazines that were in the car with him. He also had a microplastic conversion kit with a firearm brace on it. And then they also found a slot for the conversion kit on his gun, the 9mm magazine that was loaded as well, an armored ballistic plate, and a marble composite notebook. And then they also found a bunch more stuff at his house, including a Glock with a switch. In the handwritten notebook, Khan discussed additional weapons and firearms, how they could be used in an attack, how law enforcement detection could be avoided once an attack was carried out. The notebook referenced a member of the University of Delaware's police department by name, and it included a layout of a building with entry and exit points under the words UD Police Station. In addition to mentioning the police officer by name, investigators shared that the notebook included writings about martyrdom. Now, the next day, the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the NCCPD executed that search at his Wilmington residence. There, they also discovered a Glock 19 that was equipped with a switch, so it essentially makes it into a machine gun. There was also a .556 with a scope and a red dot. There were 11 more extended mags, hollow point rounds, and 2 plate tactical vests equipped with a single ballistic plate were also discovered. So you can see all of the evidence right there. Looks like maybe they also found some money there. So he's been charged with a felony count of possession of a large capacity magazine. He's been charged with a count of concealing a deadly weapon, a misdemeanor count of resisting, misdemeanor count of failure to have insurance, misdemeanor count of presence in the parks after dark. He had expired tags, and he had a violation of failure to license in possession. Now, acting U.S. Attorney Murray noted this case is a quintessential example of federal and state law enforcement collaborating to neutralize a grave threat to Delaware before the worst could have come to pass. I would like to thank our dedicated law enforcement partners at the FBI and the NCCPD for their exceptional work. As always, we are proud to work with them and keep Delaware safe. Now, the FBI in charge of this operation also said, I commend the devoted officers with the New Castle County PD, whose exceptional actions led to Khan's arrest before anyone was harmed. We are grateful for the coordinated and swift collaboration between partners, which resulted in this federal charge. Glad that they got him off the streets before he was able to be activated. All right. Now, it would also appear that the investigation into the Biden administration's disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, which led to the death of 13 U.S. troops, is ongoing, and it will be completed by the summer of next year. Let's go ahead and take a listen. I believe this comes from the press corps meeting that was held in the Pentagon yesterday. Well, gotta wait till this is done. While this is waiting for this commercial, guys, let me remind you of the special deal going on right now, onenessdrops.com/BOGO Red Pill 78. You can get yourself the chlorine dioxide water purification kits in a buy one, get one free deal. Everything they have on the website is buy one, get one free as long as you use that link. onenessdrops.com/BOGO Red Pill 78. Or if you're already there, you can just use the code BOGO Red Pill 78. You can also get the BOGO deal on any of their already discounted bundles, which are there down at the bottom of the at the bottom of the webpage. You can get their hydrochloric acid digestive drops, which, if you have heard, are great for indigestion. You can also pick up their DMSO, anything that they offer, buy one, get one free. Don't miss out. It's definitely a good deal for the holidays. So let's take a listen and hear about the timeline on the investigation into the disastrous withdrawal of Afghanistan.
Thanks, Kingsley. Jordan Conrad's from Gateway Pundit. I wanted to ask you, in May, the Secretary announced a new investigation into the Afghanistan withdrawal under Biden. In light of the recent events with one of these refugees killing a service member, is there any updates on that investigation?
I don't have any updates for you at this time, but I can tell you that the review that we're doing into the horrendous Afghanistan withdrawal under the previous administration, the Biden administration, is expected to be complete by summer of 2026. And we are committed to ensuring that this review, unlike others, is much more unredacted, that the American people are able to consume the report for themselves and see what truly happened on that fateful day and that fateful withdrawal. And we owe it to our service members to accomplish that. The review is being led by our chief Pentagon spokesman and senior advisor to the Secretary, Sean Parnell, an Afghan veteran himself. And he takes very seriously the responsibility to getting answers to the American people. So we are committed to that 100%. And in summer 2026, the public will be able to have that report.
Also, I wanted to let everybody know that
the greatest success book of all time.
Yesterday in the chat, I believe it was Marine in the Woods, had alerted me to the fact that he was the head of security at Bagram on the day that this happened. He and his unit were actually some of the first to arrive to assist in helping to address the medical issues that were taking place, and of course also to take care of the deceased, as well as all of the Afghan civilians that lost their lives as well. So I'm going to be having a conversation with him, and I'm probably going to see if he'd be willing to come on the show so that we can talk about his experiences and what he thinks about this investigation going forward. All right, now, Leon Panetta is still perpetuating the attempt to impeach Secretary of War Hegseth. Leon Panetta was at one time defense secretary. He was also director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and he signed that letter for Hunter Biden, accusing the Hunter Biden laptop of having all of the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. Now, obviously, Leon Panetta, as former CIA, as former SecDef, he was attempting to use his own personal cachet and references to delegitimize the Hunter Biden laptop. And now, as former CIA and former SecDef, he is attempting to paint Pete Hegseth as a war criminal, even though we know that the story that was perpetrated by the Washington Post never actually happened. So Panetta was the first Secretary of Defense for Obama in 2009, and he has come forward to say that he doesn't think there's any question that this second strike was a war crime. He also said, I don't think that there's any question it's a war crime. If it happened in that way, I think the best thing that's happening now is that the Armed Services Committee in both the Senate and House have indicated that they're going to do a full investigation of this issue. And I think that's what's needed, because there's obviously going to be a lot of different viewpoints. You heard what the president said, but I think ultimately it's up to those committees to find out exactly what happened and if it was a war crime, to make sure that they hold people accountable. Fun fact. Panetta, as one of the signers, an intel expert on that Hunter Biden laptop letter, is a part of the ongoing criminal conspiracy to engage in a plot to destroy President Trump and both his first and second presidential administration. So I wonder if Leon Panetta might potentially be called in to testify as part of the grand juries that are taking place down in southern Florida. Now, we've also had an announcement come from Venezuela in the wake of all of these narco-trafficking boats that have been blown up. It would appear that Maduro has agreed to begin resuming the acceptance of deportation flights to Venezuela of Venezuelan citizens.
Today, Venezuela announcing it will now resume accepting deportation flights from the United States at President Trump's demand. This as the Pentagon continues to defend its strikes on alleged narco-terrorists at sea. Lucas Tomlinson is reporting. He's live here in Washington. Welcome back from...
Not alleged, because every time they blow one of these boats up, they also fish a bunch of kilos of cocaine out of the water.
Trinidad, Lucas, what's going on down south
Thanks,
today?
John. President Trump says he didn't know anything about that secondary strike on the alleged drug boat at the center of scrutiny right now in Washington. Trump gave his support to the mission and his war secretary, Pete Hegseth, who said he didn't stick around after the initial strike because he had a meeting to attend.
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded in fire or smoke. You can't see anything. You got digital. This is called the fog of war.
The strike in question, September 2nd off the coast of Trinidad, the first of more than 20 over the past 3 months on alleged narco-terrorists.
Good.
Those who initially survived that September 2nd strike were later killed in a follow-up attack. Republican Senator
And Fox News is obviously, unironically and without any additional commentary, simply repeating exactly what the Washington Post said. And it's already been completely debunked.
And Paul condemned the strike earlier today.
I frankly think it's absolutely illegal.
And Rand Paul is doing the exact same thing. He is merely repeating talking points from one of the most prestigious fake news organizations in America.
The latest explanation is they weren't blowing up the people, they were blowing up the boat. If those darn people just wouldn't cling to the wreckage, they would be fine.
Hegseth says the order to strike the boat again was made by Navy SEAL Admiral Frank Bradley, who at the time was leading Joint Special Operations Command. General Keane says the follow-up strike was necessary.
In this case, the boat and the cargo needed to be destroyed and the terrorists eliminated. And given the fact the terrorists weren't eliminated, it's well within that commander's authority to finish and eliminate the mission that he was assigned.
Chuck Schumer says he wants the full video of that September 2nd strike released. Senator Tim Kaine just told our colleague Bill Maloogian.
The video has already been released, so it's a dead-in-the-water issue. Now, what's funny is that Rand Paul posted this yesterday. Coast Guard records show that prior to the reign of blow them to smithereens, 21% of boats stopped off the coast of Venezuela possessed no drugs. Do you guys know what the inverse of that means? That means that 79% of these boats had drugs on them. So I don't really care what Rand Paul has to say about it, but I am also going to play you another clip because Rand Paul says, I worry about boat strikes making us miss actual fentanyl trafficking from Mexico. Does Rand Paul not know how many elite military units are out there or what the capabilities of the U.S. military is? Does he actually think that because we have one set of guys in the Caribbean taking care of these drug boats before they even get into U.S. waters, that we're not going to somehow be able to simultaneously pay attention to the drugs that are being smuggled across the southern border? President Trump has already said that we're about to start doing land strikes, regardless of what country these drugs are coming through. So I think that Rand Paul is once again out here peacocking needlessly, and I'm getting pretty annoyed with him.
Senator Schumer has asked for footage of these strikes to be released. Is that something that you would support?
The footage has already been released. I mean, it's like so patently obvious, the fake news propaganda coming out of these people's mouths. The footage is already out there. We saw it on September 2nd.
Yes, we need to see the footage. We need to hear the audio. The Secretary of Defense has now said that he left the room. That's fine. But the whole idea is the Admiral's not just making these decisions without an order. The order came from the Secretary of Defense. And then I hear some of my colleagues in the hallway just saying, oh, no big deal. We do this all the time. Whenever we bomb people, we just do a second tap on them, man. If they're moving, we go back and hit them again. Well, if it's soldiers with guns shooting our soldiers, I'm fine with that. But this is a pretense of a war. They've just said, oh, we call these people in these boats narco-terrorists so we can kill them without any kind of proof, without any kind of justification, because we say so, because we say it's a war.
It is a war, Rand Paul. Hundreds of thousands of Americans dead every single year because of the drugs that have been allowed to flow into our country. You know what I think? I think maybe, this is just my opinion, you know, Rand Paul has his connections to Kentucky bourbon. Maybe Rand Paul wants the cocaine to keep flooding into the United States of America because Coke and bourbon, they go together rather nicely. I don't know. Allegedly, in my opinion, just throwing it out there. Now, take a look at this. An illegal alien who had previously been deported 4 different times from the United States of America, kept snaking his way in. He's now accused of killing an 11-year-old boy. His name, Aiden Antonio Torres de Paz, 11 years old, dead in a hit-and-run crash the day before Thanksgiving. So instead of spending Thanksgiving with his parents, unfortunately, they were picking out a coffin. Now, this illegal alien who repeatedly came back into the United States after being deported, Hector Balderas Aguilar, he's an illegal alien from Mexico. He was arrested by the Escondido Police Department last month. He was charged with felony hit and run for causing death or injury. And according to the police, on the day before Thanksgiving, Aiden Antonio Torres de Paz was playing outside when his soccer ball rolled into the street. Aiden went to go get the ball. He was hit by the car that was being driven by Balderas Aguilar. Police allege Balderas Aguilar hit Aiden and sped off. He left this boy to die from his injuries the day before Thanksgiving. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials have since revealed that Balderas Aguilar has been deported from the United States on 4 separate occasions. Thanksgiving Day should have been a day of celebrating family and giving gratitude, but instead the family of Aiden have mourned this beautiful child's death because of this criminal illegal alien stealing his life. This happened because it was in California. This is a sanctuary state. Balderas Aguilar remains in police custody on $100,000 bail, and ICE agents have placed a detainer on him, seeking custody if he's released from jail at any time. But California, as a sanctuary state, refuses to engage in any sort of communication with ICE or any of these other people. Let me say thank you very much to Lee Walden, who says, for the heck of it, I did some math on the 20 million illegals that we want to deport. Let's say we do it in a year, 54,000 a day. I know it's more than that, but that's still BS ahead. Oh, my God. Yeah, it's an incredible amount, and I think it's more than 20 million. Wombs R Us says Panetta has serious ties to the Clintons. Yes, I believe he served as Bill Clinton's CIA director. Frey and the Boys says, I am seeing job openings for boat drivers. No experience necessary. $100 opening. Start ASAP. And Wounds R Us says, have they ever questioned CIA intelligence before? Again, Rand is not his dad. No, he certainly is not. All right, now let's talk about Louisiana. Operation Kalahula Crush or something like that. In addition to the operation going down there with ICE is also now going to get some assistance because Louisiana has just legalized bounty hunting on illegal aliens. They are deputizing agencies and getting performance bonuses. This is Act 399, making interference with these bounty hunters and ICE a crime. So now they are officially closed for the illegal alien business. Take a look.
In your breakdown, more Louisiana law enforcement agencies are signing up to assist and get paid by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. But what is a 287G agreement? The 287G program allows state and local agencies to act in a limited capacity as ICE agents. As of Tuesday, there are 18 of them in Louisiana involved in the program at different levels. Parish sheriff's offices in Plaquemines, Lafourche, and St. Charles and Hammond PD have deputies at the warrant service officer level, meaning they are able to be trained by ICE and serve warrants in their agency's jail. Police departments in Pearl River, Gretna, and Kenner fall under the task force model, which allows them limited immigration enforcement power on top of their regular duties. There is a financial incentive here. The Trump administration announced in October it would be reimbursing agencies for the salary, benefits, and overtime of each trained 287G officer. The departments are also eligible for performance bonuses. But these agreements are strictly with ICE, not with Border Patrol. So it's not clear how these agreements will work in New Orleans or how this might interact with Act 399, a brand new Louisiana law which makes it a crime for any to knowingly interfere with federal immigration enforcement efforts.
So it's not just average, everyday bounty hunters, just private individuals. It's also members of law enforcement in Louisiana. This is exactly what we need to do. Like Lee said, 54,000 a day if we're on the small end of 20 million. That's simply unsustainable. We're never going to get all these people out. We are going to have to up these efforts bigly. Now, here is Operation Kalahula Crunch. They're going to be looking, obviously, for those some 80,000 illegal aliens who already have final orders of removal, violent criminal illegal aliens who have been released after arrest for a variety of crimes, home invasion, armed robbery, grand theft auto, and rape. New Orleans sanctuary politicians have released these monsters to further terrorize American citizens, Homeland Security says. Under President Trump and Secretary Noem, we are restoring law and order for the American people. And yes, you guys, that was Chi-Chi, the birthday boy. I think he's coming to get me because he knows it's 7:30. So we're going to watch this, and then we're going to close it out.
Ali, what have you seen so far today?
Yeah, hey, Nicole. So we're currently sitting on a target right now with Border Patrol. We're embedded with them as they conduct their operations. It's important for us to be embedded with them to see how they conduct things here in New Orleans because, of course, they've received backlash in other cities where they've conducted these operations. L.A., Chicago, they've faced lawsuits and other issues there. So we're kind of seeing how these operations are conducted and unfolding here in New Orleans as well. Now, right now, the target that they're currently looking at is a Cuban national. He's an aggravated felon, and he's also a sex offender. Remember, these crimes were committed here in the United States. And so right now, what DHS is saying is they're going after the worst of the worst. They're going after these criminal targets. You're looking at some of them on the screen who they say were released back to the streets because of sanctuary policies that, quote, force local authorities to ignore ICE arrest detainers in New Orleans. Now, the individuals that you're looking at were singled out by the administration, arrested for crimes including home invasion, armed robbery, grand theft auto, and rape. Now, when it comes to this city, it's wildly different than the former operations that we've seen. Of course, as Kalahula Crunch, that operation unfolds, they have different support here in New Orleans. The governor actually requested federal support and federal reinforcement as this operation is now underway. So we will likely see the National Guard deployed to this area in the coming weeks as well, based on comments that President Trump has made. So when it comes to this operation, again, this is a targeted enforcement operation that we're sitting on right now as we are embedded with Border Patrol because they are going after this specific target. They establish patterns of life. They find out where they're living. They have warrants to go after them for arrest. So that is what they are doing right now and what we are observing. So right now they're waiting until until they have those eyes on the target, and then they will deploy and go after that specific individual. Now, they are looking at 2 different individuals with similar crimes. Both ag felons, both are sex offenders, and both are Cuban nationals, and they're both in this area, so they're waiting to get eyes on those targets.
All right. Before we conclude and I go through the final thank yous and the gold pills, let me bring you one more special message from our friends over here on Rumble. Let's see. New research says that over 80% of Americans and 3/4 of Trump supporters support America First international assistance. According to a new poll by McLaughlin, one of President Trump's favorite pollsters, Americans across the country support assistance designed to root out fraud, tamp down terrorism, secure our borders, support our small farmers, and feed starving children. And over 70% of Trump supporters believe that President Trump should win the Nobel Peace Prize if he creates a world where almost no child starves to death. This is the type of assistance we can get behind. Many people will try to stop him, but only President Trump can turn America First international assistance into a reality. If he does it, a Nobel Prize is in his future. You can use the QR code on screen or the link that you see down below. Now, funny story, you guys. Before I came on the air today, or a couple hours before I came on the air, I got a text. I got a text from somebody who claimed that they were from an organization called Partners in Peace. He said, we're asking how people see Israel and its role as a U.S. partner. Do you have a moment to chat? And I said, go ahead. And he said, I'm glad you're open to chatting. We're working to show how Israel is a vital ally to the U.S., sharing our values and freedoms. When you hear about Israel in the news or online, what comes to mind first? And I thought, well, this doesn't necessarily sound like just questions. It sounds like a PR campaign. And so the first thing that came to mind was the Balfour Declaration. And he said, it took him a while to answer. I think he had to look it up. He said that's a significant piece of history. But looking at the present, Israel has consistently engaged in peace efforts and made proposals for resolving the conflict. The U.S.-Israel alliance is crucial for both countries' security interests. What do you think about the role of this alliance in promoting stability in the region? And I said, I think the most significant movement towards peace has come as a result of President Trump's efforts to engage in diplomacy in the region with both Israel and other regional nations. I think Israel's efforts have been less significant. I also think Netanyahu funding Hamas did little to bring the region closer to peace. Anyways, he totally ignored any of the things that I had to say, which I felt were, valid criticisms that should be addressed. And he was just like, oh, sure. Okay. Anyways, I never finished the conversation with him because I went live. But my point is, ultimately, whoever it is that's sending me this text message is clearly trying to influence my perception of the nation of Israel. And it is something that I think definitely turns people off. When you have a valid, like Netanyahu funding Hamas, like how could that not be something that people look at and say, well, gosh, how did that do anything other than further acts of terrorism in the region, victimizing Jewish people? That should be something that should definitely be addressed. Let's talk about the real issues instead of just trying to whitewash over things. It would be as if the CIA texted me and said, hey, how do you feel about the CIA's efforts to stop drugs from coming into inner cities? I would say, well, I think it's bullshit. Obviously, the CIA created the crack cocaine epidemic in the 80s, and they've been perpetuating it since the entire time. And that's why the Democrats are so hell-bent on stopping these drug boats from coming out of the Caribbean Sea. I can't tell you, I didn't even have time for this, but there were a bunch of clips of Democrats saying that, cocaine's not that bad, basically. It like trying to whitewash over it. Like, don't whitewash over it. Let's be real about this. I don't care what the drug is. If you get people addicted to it, they're going to start engaging in criminal behavior so they can get their hands on that drug. Let's continue the work of President Trump bringing economic prosperity and interdependence through all nations. That's the best way. I think we're going to bring peace to every nation on earth, whether they're in the Middle East, in Europe, Central America. I think we can do it, and I think President Trump is doing it right now. Mostly, what I want to see is Americans continue to make America great again. Finally, let's go back here to Pilled and say thank you very much to Filter Dog, who said, I would be happy to have KBJ removed from the bench. I would too. Sean Joe, thank you for the can, the cookie, and the cookie. Thank you to Red Gun 51 for the gold pills. Thank you to Sean Joe for 3 more cookies. Thank you to Red Gun for a can. Thank you to Judy, the lady pug, for a cookie. Thank you to Miss Echo, who says Trump's first term meeting with governors, Pompeo, I think, remarked he has names of all the governors friendly with China. Don't think that list was made public, or was it? No, I don't think it was made public, but it's certainly something that I think would be on the back burner when considering everything that's going on here. It's kind of ironic. I've seen less getting revealed about these governors and their relationships with China than I thought I was going to. Certainly, they've been addressing the problem of China being allowed to buy buying land next to military bases, but there's a lot more work to do. And I want to be very clear. I don't care whether it's Somalia, China, or any other nation. I don't want any other country having undue influence here in the United States of America. And that includes Israel. That includes Venezuela. That includes any other nation in any other part of the world. It includes Canada. That includes Mexico. America needs to be governed by Americans. And any politician that has the influence of another nation on them when making decisions is a problem for the people of the United States of America. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says, I love that the MSM is crying because they were not allowed at the Pentagon presser. They did it to themselves. They were bitching and moaning. It was so funny. Filter Dog says, somebody needs to show Rand the data on fentanyl deaths. You would think that he would understand the dangers of opiates because, I mean, they destroyed Kentucky just like they destroyed plenty of other states in that area. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie, and thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. All right, you guys, I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to set us up a raid real quick. I set up a raid for Season Pixels over on, over on Pilled. But tonight, you know what, you guys? I'm just going to set up, well, shoot, I can't do that one. I've got to do a unique one. Let me find somebody who's live right now that doesn't have hardly any viewers. We're going to do somebody a favor. Probably don't want to jump over to a gaming or a crypto stream. How about, let's see. Petropatriarchy, Tommy's podcast. He's got 3 people watching. Okay, you guys, I'm going to send the Rumble. Now, this is gaming. Sorry, I'm trying to send you to something that would be interesting for everybody. How about... Okay, how about this one? Ask the Inspector with Scott Ritter, U.S. Tour of Duty, hosted by Jeff Norman. I don't know who this is, you guys, but I figure I should just set up a raid, and you guys can tell me whether or not this was a show worth watching, but just say hello. There you go. All right. Good luck. God bless. I'll see you tonight at 9 p.m. over on Badlands Media for Altered State, and if I don't see you there, then I'll see you here tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Peace.